Hello. So hopefully I've done this correctly. I get slightly better each week. Um, so I've been really busy doing various things. So I didn't have much time to prepare today, but I've written down some news items and I'll go over those firstly. So hello to Cheryl, who's the first person here. The first thing is that I've had an ongoing audio issue when I've been recording videos. And that is really caused by two things. It's firstly caused by joining together lots of files, lots of audio files with video files. And it's secondly caused by me using a rudimentary method for doing this, which was the only method I knew how to do when I started. So it's clearly not the ideal method because I would record the audio and video separately, which obviously you're probably not advised to do. You should record the audio and video together. I splice them together, which is probably not something you should do. And I'm splicing together many different files. So that's what was causing the problem. And the funny thing is that on my computer, the file is absolutely fine. But when you process it through YouTube, it just creates this strange repetition at various points in the video. So the good news is I've been searching for a different platform to use that was A, would do what I needed it to do, B, that I understood, and C, that was affordable. And eventually I found it. So I don't think there'll be any further audio issues now. I think I've solved the audio issues and I can record the video and audio together. So I'll just say hello to a few people. Hello to Douglas. Hello to Little Unicorn, hello to Jay Brown, hello to Patrick, and hello to Yelda. So I've been really busy on lots of things over the last few weeks, and December's going to be a pretty big month with lots of things happening. I've got a lot of guests that I've been connected with. Some of them are new, and some of them are going to be repeats, but I've got a hell of a lot of people that are going to be coming on over the next few months. I'm also busy doing lots of things, so I'm not quite sure what December is going to look like. There may be more interviews than usual if I manage to get them recorded. I've recorded one today that's going to go out on Friday, and then I'm recording several others in the weeks to come. So I think December it's going to be a challenging month for me, but I think it will be an interesting one. Something else that I want to mention is that I've received a lot of emails from people. I mentioned this last time, and I'll probably end up mentioning it again in the future. I've got over 100 unanswered emails now. I've managed to sort out so that there's an automated response now saying, thank you for your email, blah, blah. So at least people know that I've received them. And I do read every word of everything that I receive. Unfortunately, answering all emails at this point in time is impossible given everything that I'm doing. So I just wanted to make people aware of that because I try to answer as many comments as I can, and things are getting more and more out of control with the emails. So I don't really see myself ever catching up. But the important thing to emphasize is if you do have something to share, please do share it because I read everything and it could be very important. It may give me a lead, or it may give me some information that I don't know, or it may lead to something or someone else. But please don't email me. Please don't refrain from mailing me just because I'm not quite up to speed with answering. I mean, a friend of mine suggested that I should get someone to help with answering my emails, but I just don't feel comfortable doing that or giving access to my email account to someone else, I wouldn't do that anyway, but given the sensitivity of the subject, it just doesn't seem like a very good idea. So please do continue to email me if you have something to share, because sometimes I'll email you back and I'll always read it. So I'll go through a few hellos. So hello to Gabrielle, hello to Brendan, hello to Cheryl. Cheryl asks, has everyone been catching up with the 19 nurses posts? So obviously I was at that event and I know the founders quite well. So I just mentioned that I've been given the permission to share them on my channel. However, I don't think I'm going to be reposting them in their entirety. I'm probably going to do some presentations where I take some of the highlights and then add to that and make some comments and do an introduction, rather than, pilfer the whole thing. Because firstly, I don't feel comfortable doing that, and then secondly, there are issues on YouTube if you attempt to repost something in its entirety from another channel, even though I have permission to do that. YouTube don't like you to do that, so I do have permission to share some of that stuff, but I will do it in a format that hopefully makes it useful and interesting to people, and then try to refer as many people as possible to the originals as well. Hello to Zaina. Hello to So Hard to Find a Good Handle. I think so. Bernie's talking about the number of views for 19 nurses. So one of the issues is getting discovery on YouTube is not easy. I mean, it's very surprising to me that I am now in a position where I do have, my videos get shown to people, and I do have a good, not only viewership, but what they call impressions. So I'm going to explain this in a future video, possibly. But basically, when you post a YouTube video, it will, unless you ask the system not to do this, which is it would be a strange thing to do. Obviously, it will show the video to all of your subscribers. So you will, if you have, I've got nearly 4,000 now, it will show the video to all 4,000 subscribers immediately, and then it will gauge how well that video does in the first certain period of time. I don't know what it is exactly, but it might look at it after an hour and think, I'm fortunate that all of my videos get viewed, so then they get pushed out. So basically the algorithm looks at how it performs very early on, and then it decides, am I going to show this video to anyone else? And if it does really, really badly, then it won't, or it will show it to a small number of people. And if it does well, then it will show it to more people. And also the more information YouTube has, the better it is at identifying people who may watch the video. So there's an art, and I certainly have not mastered this art, but once I started posting videos, and as I've said several times, I had no plan to do this full time or to do this to the extent that I have. But as I began to post videos, I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. If I'm going to do it properly, I need to learn from people who know more than me and are better at it than me, which was not difficult. So I tried to read on Reddit forums, and I've interacted a little bit with some people that, in many cases, they're big YouTubers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So I tried to learn a little bit about how you present things, how you how you get the algorithm to view you favorably, etc., etc. I am by no means an expert at this, far from it, but I've tried to do the best job that I can, because the information is important. We need to get in front of as many people as possible. So unfortunately, you can have the best video in the world, and also if you go back and look at my very first videos, they're not very good. The content is good. I knew as much about the case then as I do now, nearly. I've learned stuff over the last 6 months, of course. But if you look at the audio is terrible, but more importantly, the presentation is dreadful. I mean, I know how to do a half decent thumbnail now. Even now, my thumbnails are not great, but they're okay. The titles are a lot better. I know how to present the video. My audio is better. Everything has just got a little bit slicker. And overall, that all adds up to quite a lot. So as you begin to do that, and as you begin to get, leverage, and as people share your video, and as people like your video, and as people comment, and the algorithm trusts you, and then it pushes you out to more people. So beginning from nowhere and beginning from nothing is very difficult. So no matter how good your video is, YouTube as a platform cannot understand that. It cannot understand this person has created a good video. It has no ability to do that. all it has the ability to do is look at your metrics that you achieve and make recommendations. It will, you'll see it in the sidebar of recommended videos, or sometimes you'll see it on your homepage, and there's other ways that it can be pushed out to people, and it will do that entirely on your metrics. So when 19 nurses post videos, basically the first thing they've ever posted on the channel, the YouTube algorithm has nothing to go on whatsoever. So if I could have done, I would have helped them with the posting of the video, but I just haven't got the time to do that, unfortunately. All I can do to help them is try and push it out to more people through my channel, which is what I will do. But basically, you can have you could make the best YouTube video in the world, and it could only be seen by like 10 people quite easily, because if the algorithm doesn't understand it and it doesn't know who to show it to, and you're not known by anyone and you haven't got any subscribers, it's very, very difficult. That's why I never thought in a million years that I would have a YouTube semi-career, if you want to describe it as a career. But I'll definitely keep going, because to get to 4,000 subscribers is really hard. And I've never thought for 1 second that would happen. And I know how hard it is to grow a channel. It's because there's so much competition. And then, as I say, when you start, the system just simply doesn't know who you are and doesn't really care. It cares about established people that it understands. Just have a drink of water. So that would help to explain why there are not as many views as you might wish for, but I'll do what I can to help them, of course. So someone has mentioned, I mean, I agree with you, Alder, that the event was brilliant. The talks were fantastic. It was very emotional to be in the room. There was some real moments of hope, and there were some really dark moments. And there were at least 3 speakers that come to mind: Stephanie, Martin, and then I believe it's Will Powell, Robbie Powell's father. I don't know if is that one online? I think it is. Yeah, who had all been through very, very difficult circumstances. That's awful to see when, I know Martin quite well, I know Stephanie quite well, and, I mean, I consider them to be my friends. So it's awful to see how much they've suffered. And, that just makes me more determined to try and help with Lucy's case and try to do some good in the future, as much as I know that I'm a small person up against a lot of power. But I'll do whatever I can to help anyway. But yeah, I agree. It was it was absolutely brilliant and very informative. Yeah, it's a shame not everyone could be there. I know that they're trying to build up and make them a bit bigger and a bit bigger every time. So hopefully that will occur as we continue. So someone is commenting that they nearly missed this. So I did a really bad job of I don't know if promoting is the right word. Just posting that this was happening. I've been so busy doing so many different things, and I only remembered that I thought I could do a live stream. I only remembered it like about midnight last night, so I didn't quite give people the notice that I should have done. If someone's on Facebook, by the way, if someone's on the Facebook pages, if you could post it on there, then maybe people will join as well. But even though I failed to tell people it's happening, we've still got 70 people here, so that's great. Pete Hayes was great. Yeah, it was a very good talk, as was John O'Quigley. Yeah, so John would have been on the channel by now. The only reason he hasn't been, oh well, I can't actually tell you. I can't actually tell you the reason he hasn't been, but we're just waiting to resolve something, and then when it's resolved, he will definitely come on, because I've known him for a little while, and we were talking at the event, and he will come on at some point soon. It's just a case of getting this thing resolved, and then we'll have him on as a guest. Hello, Bonnie. Good to see you. Hello, Shell. Hello, JRR942. Hi to So Hard to Find a Good User Handle. So Patrick Martin says, I watched the Stephanie Davis lecture, another woman badly treated by Cheshire Police. So, I mean, I think that's an understatement. I think her treatment was indefensibly poor. And I think the fact that they've put out these statements in the press that are just, I mean, I've shown this now several times on the channel, and no one could, I've said this to Stephanie as well, no one could watch her presentation and be in any doubt that she's anything other than extremely knowledgeable about her topic, no doubt. So for Cheshire Police to try and diminish her and say that she was basically a clerk is pretty insulting and pretty rude. Not that there's anything wrong with being a clerk or administrator, but Stephanie is certainly not that. And maybe they should have checked the thermal inquiry because, as I've shown on the channel, there are meeting notes where she's in meetings with them discussing important forensic information. So they don't even they can't even come up with a plausible story. So really, they've just embarrassed themselves again. So I'll just go over the news again. So I said hello to a few of you, and I'll catch up again in a bit. So I was discussing earlier that I've solved the audio issue, I think, now, hopefully. And also, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming in December, a lot of content, a lot of interviews. I've got a lot of people lined up, or I've either recorded, some I've recorded, some I'm waiting to record, some I've made contact with them. So hopefully there'll be a lot of new guests and a lot of interviews. And I mean, I've got an incredibly busy month. There's loads of things happening. I'm going away. Obviously, it's Christmas. So I have no idea what December is going to look like, but I'll just try and make it work and keep things going. I've tried to record a few things ahead of time so that they're in the bag, but then it's difficult to get too far ahead. But we'll see what happens. But there is going to be some exciting stuff for you and new stuff for you to view for sure. I mentioned my unanswered emails, my pathetic attempts. I don't need to look at that. So let me see this week if I can work out how to put a news article on the screen. Let me see if I can work out how to do that. Okay, that's the wrong button. Share screen. Share screen. Let's see if this works. It just does not work. I mean, that clearly hasn't worked. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Right. Does that work? You should be able to see my screen now. Let me scroll down. Can you see that? I think it should be on the yeah. So that actually worked. So I'm proud of myself. So if I scroll down, yeah, you can scroll down. So this is an article that Sarah Napton has written and published on the 24th of November. So I met Sarah, I mean, I've spoken to her before, but I met her very briefly at Manchester. No dignity for dead at Letby Hospital. Mortuary reporters claim they are victims of witch hunt for highlighting demeaning conditions. Dead patients in Lucy Letby's former hospital were left naked and treated without dignity, whistleblowers have claimed. Two porters are taking the Countess of Chester Hospital to tribunal, claiming they were victimised for highlighting the demeaning conditions in mortuary services. John Creighton and Thomas Jones said that dead patients were left fully exposed on beds or trolleys and claimed that workers were forced to move bodies without adequate protection. They were told to unwrap the deceased and check for jewellery, hearing aids and false teeth, which they found to be disrespectful and deeply distressing. In an email in February 2024 submitted to the tribunal, lead mortuary technician Jamie Cunningham admitted there are many examples of lack of care for our deceased patients on a daily basis for both hospital and community deaths. I physically would not have time to complete the number of Datex incidents required to acknowledge this. So I won't read the entire article because I'm not sure that I'm supposed to do that, given that it's copyrighted. But interesting to read the hospital clearly having massive problems still. It's obviously also very difficult for people to speak out. I mean, that's very clear. So I've got another article here. Let me see if I can share this. Oh, so everyone will know about this. Everyone will know about this. Hold on one second. Share screen. Share screen. Share this one. Share. I don't like this system, but at least I know how to do it now. There we go. Dr. Bohin to retire next March. Dr. Sandy Bohin will stand down from her work in Guernsey early next year. The consultant paediatrician who has worked for the medical specialist group since 2009 has told her bosses that she intends to retire in March. Her decision to retire has followed controversies around her involvement in the prosecution of Lucy Letby and an ongoing dispute with tens of families who say they've made complaints around her work in the island. The MSG, that's the medical specialist group, and Dr. Bohin say they are unaware of many of these complaints. So I won't read any more of that. That's obviously an interesting development. I can't say too much about that because there are all manner of legal perils. So if people comment and ask questions on that, I may not be able to answer, or I may have to be careful about what I say. What I can say, I don't know if I've mentioned this previously, but when let's say the retrial happens, Dr. Evans won't be in court for the retrial. As far as I understand it, he has to be in the Court of Appeal because he was in the original trial, if he's compos mentis and able to be there, of course. So he won't be in the retrial. There must be serious question marks as to whether Bohin would be in the retrial. There are many question marks about the retrial, about what would happen, how it would be presented, how many cases they would go for, who the witnesses would be, how they could possibly hope to stand up against the power of the defence experts and so on. But what we can say categorically is that Dr. Evans will not be part of the retrial. And this must call into question whether Dr. Bohin would be. Speaking of which, let me try and share the next news item, if I can. So here we go again. I do think they could have created an easier system to share something. Right, there we go. So this is, hopefully I've got the right one. Yep, there we go. So this is Letby lawyer calls for expert witness regulation. Expert witnesses giving evidence in court should be accredited and meet minimum standards of competency, methodology, and ethics, the barrister acting for convicted former nurse Lucy Letby has declared. Calling for reform of the law governing expert witnesses, Barrister Mark MacDonald told the Bon Salon Expert Witness Conference last week that experts play a vital role in helping the courts to discover the truth, but are asked to transform technical findings into language that a decision maker can understand and trust, which can and sadly often does go too far. Problems identified by MacDonald included the absence of a regulatory body for expert witnesses, a patchwork of expectations, and an unwillingness by experts to give evidence for the defence. He called for clear and enforceable accreditation of all experts appearing in court, minimum standards of competency, methodology, and ethics, and an expert register. So again, I'll stop sharing there because I don't want to read out the whole article, which is copyrighted. But I've got a guest that's coming on soon that's going to talk about many aspects of the legal system, many aspects of the court case, many aspects related to expert witnesses. So I hope to get more legal guests in the future. There was someone that I hoped would come on who has declined. But as I say, on Friday, there'll be the first kind of legal guest that I've had. And then I'll hopefully find some more in the future. I suppose the dream guest is to have Mark on after Lucy's been exonerated, but that's going to be a little while. So the next thing I would like to share with you, which I should try and type up, I didn't prepare this at all. I was going to share the potential timeline of what, maybe I'll just tell you. I could share this, but I'll just tell you instead. It'll be easier. It would have been nice to show you, but I didn't prepare this, so I'll just tell you. So Mark indicated that the CCRC could possibly refer the case in the summer. So I would imagine that's a best case scenario rather than a worst case scenario. I don't know, but he just used that as a ballpark estimate. It could be later than that. We don't know. So let's say, based on that estimate, that the case was referred from the CCRC to the Court of Appeal in July. That could be an early estimate. He then said it would take 8 months. He estimated it would take 8 months for the Court of Appeal to set a date for the case to be heard at the Court of Appeal. So that would be taking us into February, March 2027. So then I would estimate this case would take at least 2 months before the Court of Appeal. It could take longer, but let's say 3 months, just to give us the worst estimate possible. I don't think it'd be longer than 3 months, but I don't know, because the original was 10 months, but I suggest that it will be significantly shorter than that. So let's say we start in March, that would take us to June. So then Mark says, if the case collapses at the Court of Appeal, then he believes that the prosecution will seek a retrial, which is not news to us. We know that. So then it could be 18 months to 2 years before the retrial happens, depending on how much the court system is able to prioritize it, how long it takes to arrange a date, etc., etc. Let's say 18 months. He said 2 years, but let's say 18 months for the sake of argument. That would take us into 2029, and then the court case would obviously take however long it takes. Hopefully it wouldn't be 10 months again, but that's the worst case scenario. I suppose a worse one would be the Court of Appeal application fails, which is not inconceivable. But let's just park that scenario. Assuming that the Court of Appeal is successful, we could be looking at 2029 or even 2030 for this case to be resolved. However, it's not guaranteed that there would be a retrial. It's possible that the Crown Prosecution Service would choose not to contest the case, for example, because they might look at there's 29 experts now, there could be 40 experts by the time the case is heard. Now, let's say they had 2. They might struggle to get 2 experts. They'll go into court. I don't know how many would be willing to go in there and face this, but by everything that will have come out by then, and given how high profile this will have become. So with that in mind, the prosecution, when I refer to the prosecution, I'm referring to the prosecuting barristers, but both the Crown Prosecution Service and the Court of Appeal, they have the power and the potential to say, we're not going to contest this prosecution. Now, in my opinion, the Crown Prosecution Service will definitely... There's some confusion about what role the Court of Appeal has and what role the Crown Prosecution Service has, because the Court of Appeal has the right to say there won't be a retrial as well. But I don't quite understand the roles there. You would need some legal expert. But basically, if the prosecution is allowed to go for a retrial, which they want to do, they may have to make some sort of application to do that. The Crown Prosecution Service would have the right to overrule that. So the Crown Prosecution Service would be able to say, right, well, we're not taking this case back to court because we don't think there's any point, basically. Now, that is a distinct possibility. However, I think that they will try to avoid that because obviously that's enormously embarrassing for them. So if they're in a situation where, bear in mind, Lucy is facing the stiffest penal sentence a woman has faced since the abolition of the death penalty. It's an incredibly high-profile case. It was obviously very much covered in the media. It's been very much covered in the media ever since, apart from the 6 months when no one was allowed to say anything. So imagine how humiliating it's going to be for them if they have to admit, we can't even put a case in court that we think is credible. That's going to be enormously embarrassing. But then it's so difficult to predict, because if they do go to court with a really weak case and get annihilated and get shown up day after day after day, that's going to be very embarrassing for the Crown Prosecution Service. So it's very difficult to say exactly what will happen. But I know the timeline is perhaps not what people would want, but it could take that long. We just have to that's why we have to remain vigilant. We have to do anything possible to get the case in the media and just keep pushing and keep exposing anything that we can and support people who go out into the media, I guess, and just keep doing what we're doing now. The intellectual debate and the online debate is already over, effectively. I mean, if you, I'm going to highlight this in a future video, but if you look at the Channel 4 documentary that they posted on the Channel 4 YouTube channel, it's almost impossible to find a pro-guilty comment, and that was from what was supposed to be a balanced documentary that looked at both sides. So the intellectual argument is already over. It's just the court of public opinion that we need to focus on, and that will then put pressure on the Court of Appeal. And absolutely, we should do that. And I will be doing everything I possibly can to help with that. So that is kind of where we stand. And I wanted to go over that timeline so that people know what we're up against and the kind of timescales. And it's kind of always a bit heartbreaking for me when I read comments, and the comments to the effect of, I hope Lucy's out next year, or I can't bear for Lucy to be in prison over Christmas again. Well, we're going to have to accept that. And, she's going to be in prison for a couple more Christmases, at least. That's just a fact. The only thing that would stop that would be an extraordinary collapse of the case. If Dr. Evans came out and renounced everything he'd ever done, then that would obviously put enormous pressure on the system to act immediately. I don't suppose for 1 second that he's going to do that. Another possibility, let me just have a drink. Another possibility is that Lucy could be allowed out on house arrest. If the case collapses in the Court of Appeal, then I know Shu Lee's already mentioned this. Someone I know who is very high profile has called for this to happen. At that point, politicians might be a lot more politicians might be brave enough to speak out. There could be an enormous campaign momentum to get Lucy out of prison, even if it's not as free as we would like her to be. But she could live in her parents' house until the retrial takes place. That is a distinct possibility. I can't guarantee that, obviously, but that's just something to be aware of. And I just wanted to go over this timeline briefly and make it as clear as I can to people what the situation is. So I'll go back to looking at your comments now. Oh no, I won't, because I've got one more thing to share. So something that you may not know that I didn't know, but I've spoken to someone who's very experienced, and he wasn't surprised at all, is that Mark McDonnell won't present this case at the Court of Appeal. I wouldn't present this case in court. It will be presented by KC. Mark obviously is doing a lot of work on it, but he won't be the presenter of the case. He may be supporting the case. He may be present in the Court of Appeal. I don't know exactly what the arrangements will be, but he won't be the person up there like Johnson and Myers making the arguments. It will be an experienced KC. We obviously don't know who that will be yet, but I am reliably informed that it won't be difficult to find someone. So that was something that I had no idea of whatsoever. And I've kind of had a steer on this. I've been told that the Court of Appeal won't look fondly. I don't even know if fondly is the right word, favourably on a junior barrister presenting a case, which seems incredibly elitist to me. It should be the quality of argument, not the person who's presenting it. But everything about, to me personally, I don't know if people agree, I'm sure many of you will, everything about the court system just seems antiquated and ridiculously elitist, and I hate it, because I would absolutely treat a barrister with respect. I would absolutely treat a judge with respect, but I don't treat them with any more respect than the person that cleans the toilet. I treat everyone with equal respect, and that's always been my ethos in life. I'm not going to blow smoke up the arse of someone because they're in a certain position, and equally, I'm not going to disrespect someone because they're in a supposedly more lowly position. I treat everyone the same, and I don't like all this reverence for the way they have to speak to the judge in court, or it seems that they feel they have to speak that way, is ridiculous. No human being should require that kind of obsequious behaviour, in my opinion. But it seems that, I always reference Oliver and Oliver Twist. It seems like very little has changed from the court system since the kind of Dickensian period. And one of the things that hasn't changed is this deference to authority and deference to people who are in a heightened position. And that's inimical to my beliefs and inimical to my belief system. So I find that difficult to accept, but the fact remains the case will be presented by KC. That's all there is to it. So I'll go back to your comments now. Hi to the next realm. Douglas Maxwell says Vivian Blondek, who is one of the founders, gave a very good talk. Yes, she did. I recommend that. Obviously, she's one of the founders of the group, so kudos to her. Hi to Robin Hood. Hi to John Bayliss. He says, good evening to everyone. Hi to Vivian. Hi to Keith. He says, hi everyone from the Isle of Man. The Manchester meeting was amazing. It was very, very good. One thing I've never told Keith is that my school that I grew up in, that when I went to junior school, they used to go on an annual trip to the Isle of Man, and I never went because I heard some negative reports about the plane they used to fly on. So I love flying. I absolutely love it, but I don't wish to be in turbulence in a puddle jumper particularly. So I've never been to the Isle of Man. I've been to the Isle of Wight, but I must go to the Isle of Man one day, and I definitely will. But I've seen many slides and many presentations of the Isle of Man because my school used to do a presentation every year. I'll maybe get the ferry. Let's go a little bit further down. So someone's saying the algorithm sent me all the 19 nurses videos pretty quickly, so it clearly works fairly well. So the reason it did that is because it knows that you want to see it. That the problem it has is with people that it doesn't understand, or with videos that it doesn't understand. It knows to show you the video because it knows enough about you to be able to show you that. But it's the casual viewer who isn't constantly looking at Lucy Letby content. That's where you get the, as much as I am very fortunate to have nearly 4,000 subscribers, I still get 50% of my views and viewing hours from people that aren't subscribed. So many of those people will be casual viewers. And the problem you have always is attracting those people when you've got no previous content. And there are many subreddits, for example, you can go and read them yourself, where people are saying, how do you get traction? I try so hard on my videos and then they get like 7 views and stuff like that. So I'm enormously privileged and enormously grateful that I have this community, and I'm definitely going to keep it going for the rest of my life. As long as I'm breathing, I'll make YouTube content, and, we'll get Lucy out of prison, and then we'll work on other miscarriages of justice and reforming the system, and I'll try to make relevant content in that area. And maybe I can make other documentaries or other podcasts on other subjects. It would always be serious topics, but maybe eventually there's the potential to do some, be a little bit more diverse. And maybe I would ask people, what would you like to see me make something about? I enjoyed doing the Theranos and the Madoff thing the other week. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking doing something completely new that you've never done before, and then presenting it to people that are used to you doing one type of content. But I thought people would find it interesting, and I have a general interest in criminology and extreme crimes, which is why I became interested in Lucy's case. Well, it's a coincidence that I became interested in Lucy's case, but I think it's why it grabbed me when I went down to the kitchen and turned the radio on. Is because I've studied, I studied Madoff, studied Theranos, studied Jeffrey Dahmer, Matthew Folder, did some terrible things, Brenton Tarrant, what's he called, Dennis Nielsen, probably several others that I've forgotten. And I'm always interested in why has that person done that thing. Luckily, I'm not one of those people who are interested in true crime that completely turns off their critical thinking and just assumes that because a court has found someone guilty, they're automatically guilty. One of the things about all of these people that I've just mentioned is that they were all absolutely, unequivocally, undoubtedly guilty, and there was just no possible way that they could defend themselves. So that was really useful, because when I'm standing there in the kitchen listening to the radio, hearing about Lucy's supposed crimes, immediately I was thinking, right, well, no one's seen anything. That's immediately a massive problem. I know in other cases that there was just no doubt that they commit these crimes. So immediately I was thinking, well, that's interesting. I'm not, probably subconsciously, I probably wasn't even thinking it consciously. I was probably just thinking this subconsciously. But it just started to seep into my consciousness, and I started to think, well, I haven't heard any evidence. No one's seen anything. This is a young nurse. Some unusual murder methods, to say the least. This is a little bit strange, is it not? So that was the thing that prompted me. So yeah, I can't remember what my original point was, but I think definitely studying previous extreme crimes of people who were guilty was very, very helpful in understanding Lucy's case. Hi to Stuart. Hi to Pete Malley. Hi to Stephen Oliver. Mentioned Stephanie giving a great talk, which I agree with. Hi to Zaina Councils. Hi to Pete Malley. Great work you're doing, Chris. Thank you very much. Hi to 19 Nurses. Good to see you here. Hi to We-V8K. Hi to Jay Brown, who says, why is it called 19 Nurses? So I assume that 19 Nurses is going to answer this question, but I would assume it's because it was founded by 19 nurses. I've never actually asked that question because I assumed that was the reason, but I don't know. So hopefully that question will get answered. Hi, next round says, hi to 19 Nurses. Thanks for organising such a great conference, which I echo entirely. Hi to Joe, Wild Magic Joe. Hi, Chris. You could do what Mark Mace does, which is create a post linking the 19 Nurses video, which just directs your subscribers to 19 Nurses channel. Yeah, that's a good idea. I maybe will do that, but I wanted to do a video because simply way more people see the videos. If it was possible, I would do a video saying I'm doing a live stream in 2 days, but that's just not possible. So the reason I wanted to make a video was it just gets seen by a lot more people, and also, as I've just explained with the algorithm, it then gets pushed out to people who don't know about it. My subscribers probably do know, or many of them know about this. It's more getting people to see it that don't know that it exists. So that's why I wanted to make a video, because then if you all support it, or if as many of my subscribers as possible support it, then it will get pushed out to other people. So next one says, hi 19 Nurses, thanks for organising such a great conference. I was there. Agreed. Hi to Martin Walker, who says hi to everyone in the chat. And Yelda asks, Chris, what did you think of Mark McDonald's speech? So I guess my primary feeling was that after Mark talked, spoke in the event, I felt very much more optimistic. Not that I was pessimistic, but it's difficult, isn't it, to know what's going to happen next, and it's difficult to, we've all seen appeals that have been turned away. Mark gave me a lot of hope, and speaking to someone else recently, they gave me more hope. So I'm very much more optimistic now, and hopefully there'll be more reason for optimism in the relatively near future. But I thought, he spoke very well. He gave some details that I didn't know, so that was useful. And yeah, I definitely came away with feeling a little bit more optimistic. As I mentioned, there were some dark moments in the event because it's a dark topic, and we heard some very moving and sad things. So it's always good to have some uplifting moments as well. So I definitely took that away from it. So someone says, how can I become a member? I am intrigued. So I can answer this really. You just go to the 19 Nurses website, and if you're a kind of suitable professional, then you can just sign up. There should be a sign up link on the website. But if I'm incorrect about that, then I'm sure 19 Nurses will correct me in the chat. So 6425, hello, you are doing excellent work. I haven't pronounced your full name in case the algorithm thinks I'm saying something else. Hi to Annie Pacman. Hi to Mark, who said I joined late, so I was watching your recently posted videos. Sorry, there's no need to apologise. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, obviously everyone knows about Child K. Everyone knows it's a ridiculous case. And I'd never really covered it in full. And even that video doesn't cover it in full, but I thought it was about time to show people how bad the court process was for the childcare retrial. And I can't for the life of me understand how it can be allowed for someone to just sit there or stand there saying, Lucy's a murderer, Lucy's a murderer, Lucy's a murderer. It just seems completely unreasonable to allow a court case in which there is a repetition of previous allegations, which is basically not supposed to happen. There are certain circumstances in which you're allowed to use previous convictions in a constructive way. Excuse me. But I don't think just repeating allegations is using them in a constructive way. So yeah, I thought it was. Oh, well, I know it was really, really poor. Hi to Frosty Robot. Hope you're good, he says. I'm very well. Hope you're well too. Yeah, Vivian says calling Stepha Clark wasn't rude, but grossly misleading and blatant lie. Of course, it was that as well. Absolutely. But you know, she's finding her feet now, and you know, you're better off not being around people like that. At the end of the day, she's been through a lot, and she's had to pick herself up from a lot. And at the end of the day, you just come back stronger. She'd be better off being in an environment where she's appreciated for who she is, not an environment that's full of people that, you know, are capable of behaving the way that they have, which I think is completely wrong. Frosty Robot says, just to say, was really impressed by some of the speakers at the 19 Nurses event. Stephanie knocked it out of the park, also Peter Hayes. So yeah, I agree with that completely. It was a great event with great speeches and a lot of food for thought, definitely. I recently, this is Shell saying, I recently saw how much Hummingbird cost. Staggering, given that they only investigated one person. Yeah, the whole thing. I think I can't say this with any confidence. This is a ballpark estimate, but once you take into account the investigation, the court case, the Thirlwell inquiry, and the retrial, you must be looking at 50 million. But it could be like 100 million. It's bare minimum 50 million. When you take into, like, considering we know how much Thirlwell already cost. I mean, I haven't done any sums or look at all of the, you know, all of the figures, but I mean, that's just a very, very rough ballpark estimate, but you're looking at tens of millions. I think 50 million is a bare minimum, and it could be 9 figures. It could be 100 million. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. If you're going to do a prosecution of this scale, you've got to make sure you get it right. I mean, the money is not the most important thing. The human cost is the most important thing, obviously, but the money is another factor. I mean, that's just basically, this is going to be tens of millions just down the toilet. I mean, I guess the people that get paid the money don't see it that way, but yeah, it's really disappointing, isn't it? To put it mildly. Hi, Chris. This is HUI-V8K. Hope you can have some rest when you are away and during the Christmas holidays. So what I'm planning to try and do is post on the 23rd of December and then not post anything on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And then I might post something on Boxing Day. I feel like Boxing Day is a day when you might sit down and watch something. And I might do a live stream on the 23rd if I'm available. I'm going away to stay in the countryside. I live in the countryside, but I'm going to stay in a different part of the countryside over Christmas. Not over the actual Christmas days, because it was too difficult to get somewhere, but in the days leading up to Christmas. So I'm going to stay in a cottage and with a friend, and obviously Keeks will be there, goes without saying. And we're going to go for some walks in the hills and such like. So that'll be nice. And yeah, I'll definitely have some rest. I'll be cooking. I'll do cooking on Christmas Day. But I like cooking, so that's fine. So yeah, I'll try and recharge the batteries a bit. But it's going to be a busy month for me as well. So Nightiness is saying, sorry, everyone needs to realise the NHS is broke. It's not just the cows of Chester. Look at the UK massive maternity scandal. So undoubtedly, there are massive problems in the NHS. That's undeniable. I mean, I heard about this many years ago, as most people have through the media, but I used to write, as I mentioned, for a healthcare publication and edit another healthcare publication. I was the editor for two and a writer for this other one. And yeah, you know, it was very clear at that time. And the person that founded these publications also told me that he thought the NHS would have collapsed by now already, and we'd all be paying private healthcare or insurance or whatever it may be. Now, obviously, that hasn't happened quite, but I know that Nigel Farage was saying that I didn't really see what he was saying exactly, because all of my time goes into the Lucy Letby case, but I did see comments about the NHS isn't working, we need to have private healthcare. Now, I'm sure virtually no one would be favourable towards that, myself included. It doesn't seem like a vote winner, but there are clearly massive problems with the NHS. And today, the budget has been announced, or elements of the budget have been announced. And it's been stated that, you know, tax is going to go up for normal working people. It's clear that there are funding issues for the NHS. Now, I know people will rightly say a lot of money goes into the pockets of people that are already wealthy. That's obviously true. That's undeniable. I don't know what the solution is. I haven't got the solution. I think that many mistakes have been made in this country, systematic mistakes over a period of decades, that to leave us in this position, which is a very bad financial position. The NHS is struggling. Most of our infrastructure is, in my estimation, worse than it has been in recent decades. And we're in an enormous amount of debt, and it's going up, and there's no real plan to ever reduce it. And it's not great overall. With that being said, let's just move on to the next comment. I always wanted to champion the NHS because of Clement Attlee and the achievement of getting it founded after the war, but all this and Lucy causes great disillusion. Yeah, I can understand that. The NHS in principle is a wonderful thing, and naturally there was a time when we could say we had the greatest healthcare system in the world, and I still believe the idea of a healthcare system that's free at the point of access is preferable. As I say, I don't want to sit here and pretend that I've got the answers, because I don't. I don't know what the answer is. That's maybe something that I will discuss in the future in another book, in other videos. My focus for the next several years will be the Lucy Letby case. If I can find a bit more time to look into other things, I will. But until this is sorted out, this will be my primary focus for sure. Hi to DJ Darkside. Good to see you here. Pete Malley says, was trying to find where Dr. Bohin did recognise specialist neonatologist training. No information forthcoming so far. So I'm afraid I don't know too much about that, but please do keep trying. Sort of Reason says, do we know the CCRC process to make their go, no-go decision? They are unlikely to be medics and probably not statisticians. I'm concerned that it's just another group of non-medics, like the Court of Appeal. So, I'm not an expert on the CCRC process, but you're correct in your assumption and assertion that they're non-medics. They don't have medics. They don't have scientific experts. Definitely not. What they do have the power to do is commission reports. And of course, they are a prominent organisation, even though we've discussed that they're underfunded and understaffed, in my estimation. I think most people's opinion. But they're still a prominent organisation, and they still have the power and the prominence to be able to say, right, we'd like you to comment on this. And they can approach doctors, they can approach scientists, they can approach qualified people. I don't know the entire process. They need to basically look at the claims and see whether or not they have merit. Of course, we know that they do. It's broadly understood, that they do. But they can't just make the assumption that yes, this is definitely okay because it's been said by other neonatologists. They have to do some investigation and kind of probing of these claims. And that's probably what's taking the time for the case to be referred. But I mean, I must reiterate, I would be unbelievably surprised. Like I can't be 100% certain, but I'm 99.99% certain this will be referred because, as I said before, that to her credit, Vera Baird from the CCRC has made an effort to ensure that she's trying to reform the organisation and particularly the image of the organisation. She's been quite visible in some of the things that she's done, whereas I feel previous leaders have been, if leader is the right word, the term, have not been as keen to do that. I don't know them personally, so I don't know what their thinking was, but they haven't been as visible as Vera has been. So I think that's to her credit, and I think she's aware. I'm certain she's aware of the criticism. So that, given that, and given the fact that this is an incredibly high-profile case, of Lucy's case, it would astound me if they didn't refer this to the Court of Appeal, and I'm pretty sure that they will. So Mark says, he's just saying hello to 19 nurses. Great videos. I really enjoy watching them. DJ Darkside says, expert witnesses should also be allowed to testify without them being targeted and ruining their careers because they went against the establishment. Yeah, that's a major problem. This would be why it'd be good to have an approved body of some sort that oversees the appointment of expert witnesses. How that would look, how that would happen, I don't know, but there's going to be a lot of fallout from this case that's baked into the cake. So there will be a big opportunity for reform, and we need to take the opportunity. And I mean, I'm certainly planning to write a second book about Lucy's case. Of course, that's not the priority at the moment, but the second book would be about the reformation of the criminal justice system. Yes, so there's a question about whether Mark would be in the retrial, so I probably made that very clear now. DJ Darkside, that's saying that this is a huge issue for expert witnesses. It is, obviously, we know the case of Dr. Wayne Squire, but there's other expert witnesses who have been kind of embarrassed, one of a better term. And then when you get a case like this where you're having to defend someone who is accused of harming infants, then it becomes very contentious, or it can be contentious, and then that dissuades them from doing it. So there needs to be measures taken to ensure that people can speak up and can speak without fear. Yeah, so 19 Nurses is saying here that the CCRC commission their own experts, as I mentioned. Let's go a bit further down. Evening, Chris. Mark McDonald seems certain there'd be a retrial in the event of the verdict being overturned. I agree it might be ordered, but can't see it ever taking place. Any thoughts? So I answered this in quite some detail already. It's a toss of the coin for me, because on the one hand, the retrial is going to be hugely embarrassing for them. What they could do, as I've mentioned previously, is they could go for a few of the stronger quote-unquote cases, perhaps. I don't know whether they're even allowed to do that. I believe they're allowed to do it because the prosecution is allowed to put a completely different case in court. So they might go for a few of the stronger cases. But then on the other hand, they might just think, well, we're not going to contest this because we're going to look ridiculous in the retrial. So it really is a toss of a coin. Either of those two could happen. Graham says, hi, Chris. I doubt it would ever happen, but do you think any retrial should be screened live? There's such a lot of public interest. I remember watching the British nanny Louise Woodward's trial. All court proceedings should be recorded. Whether they're broadcast live or not, I don't know whether or not that's feasible. It'd have to be on a delay, certainly. I can't really comment on the live aspects of it, but it 100% should be recorded. Court proceedings should be recorded. A case of this importance definitely should be recorded. There's no doubt about that. We shouldn't be, begging, borrowing, and stealing to try and get hold of the transcripts and get hold of what happened in court. For this case, it's ridiculous. It's completely. It goes against everything that civilized society should be, which is transparent and the systems and machinery of state, of which the court is an extension of the state, essentially, should be transparent and they should be available to the public. Simple as that. Would higher powers find a way of arranging for straightforward exoneration with no retrial if the Court of Appeal orders a retrial? So I've discussed this already. It's a distinct possibility. We know that obstetricians are working on reports from Mark McDonald. This will presumably cause further CCRC delay, but understand belt and braces. Do we know if further reports are planned? I would imagine that at this point in time, once the obstetrics is done, we've got a really powerful array of reports. And I don't think there'd be anything further at that point. There's this new report regarding the notes from this expert that's been in many previous cases, been in Sally Clark case, I believe. So at that point, excuse me, at that point, I think we'll just be waiting for them to dot the I's and cross the T's, because I think it's a formality for this to be referred. Hello to Melanistic Marble. Yesterday's news on the BBC stated there are 80,000 cases yet to be heard in court. Astonishing. So it does take a very long time for a case to be referred to court. It is incredible. In some serious cases, the person that is guilty is walking around the streets for 2 years before they actually get to court. Who knows what they could do in that time? It's extraordinary, but that's a reflection of the times we live in, I guess. So someone's just pointing out the Louise Woodward case was in the USA. Yeah, I realise that now. I'd forgotten that, but that's true. Yes. Hi to Black Squareable. Good to see you here. So 19 Nurses says 2030 would mean 10 years in prison. So if she was there until November 2030, then yeah, it would be 10 years. Terrible, but we've just got to keep pushing and do the best that we can. If we do a great job, then Lucy may come out of prison before then, and there's the possibility she can come out on house release. So 10 years is normal. Michael O'Brien, I know that you know him. He was in prison for 11 years as an example. So unfortunately, that's the system we're dealing with. It's very depressing. It's tragic. There's nothing we can do about it unless someone invents a time machine, as I've said before. We just got to deal with the situation as it exists. There's nothing else we can do. So Carl says, hello to Carl. They can't try the case again because of the perjury committed by the chief witnesses. They can't present the same case again, and they have absolutely nothing else. Yeah, I mean, they'd have to make adjustments to the case. I apologise, but my throat is really dry this evening. I don't know why, but it's really annoying. I couldn't be like a radio DJ. I'd be useless. Yeah, so they can actually change the entire prosecution case. As ridiculous as it sounds, they could go into court and say, right, Lucy Letby is as guilty of these crimes, but we're going to use completely different diagnoses for every single infant in the case. They are allowed to do that, and they can do that. Obviously, that wouldn't look great for them, but no one can. It's very hard to predict what will happen with the retrial, but I completely agree with you that presenting the same case with the same shift chart would be ludicrous. So they're going to have to come up with something if they're going to represent it. That's for sure. How they're going to do that, no idea. But it will be a real problem, which is why it's a coin toss for me as to whether they go back to court or not. They'll literally probably be behind the scenes thinking, what would be the most embarrassing? Would it be more embarrassing if we didn't even contest this case, or would it be more embarrassing if we did contest this case? And that's what they'll be considering, in my view. as an American, I was appalled that they brought a case against the nanny Louise Woodward, but then the parents were doctors and they believed the parents over anything else. So I can't really comment on that, given I do remember that case. I do remember the nanny, but I don't know enough of the details to really comment. But it seems a lot of cases occur in the absence of solid evidence. Someone is just believed over someone else, and that sets a stone rolling down a hill, and then no one can ever push it back up the hill. That's what happened with Andrew Malkinson. The only evidence used in court was an eyewitness account, and that it was proven that the eyewitness was a heroin addict. You know, they don't deserve condemnation for that. They deserve support and empathy. But clearly, if they're a heroin addict, they're not going to, who was living on the streets, I believe, at the time, they're not going to be the most reliable witness. And of course, they were completely wrong, and he was exonerated. So yeah, that kind of thing happens quite a lot. Hello to Ruth. Alan Fasbury says, Stephanie Davies spoke of her real fears that Cheshire Police will come after her for speaking out. Do you fear repercussions for speaking out for Lucy? And if not, why not? Well, I haven't done anything wrong, so it would be fairly difficult to do that. We do have a modicum of free speech still in this country, so you are still allowed to say, I think the police made a mistake at this point in time. We're not the Soviet Union under Stalin at this point in time. As much as I'm critical of the current infrastructure and the current institutions, so I'm not concerned about that. And I didn't really want to contemplate that. It's not very likely. I'm obviously careful about what I say. I always stick to the facts. If you stick to the facts, then you're absolutely fine. So no, I don't. And I think Stephanie, not wishing to speak for her, but she's understandably concerned because of what's happened in the past. But as she becomes more public and more known, I think the chances of that happening, I don't wish to tempt fate, but I say they're diminishing every day. So Melanistic Marble says, hi Chris, I hope she would be bailed if the Court of Appeal declared the conviction unsafe. So her being bailed is also a possibility. There would be an enormous bail for her though. That's something to consider. Now, maybe the bail could be raised through crowdfunding. Maybe her parents could pay the bail. I don't know. I think asking for it to be released on house arrest is perhaps more practical. I really can't comment about these. It would be tricky for the system to bail her, and it would be tricky for the system to allow her out on house arrest. But having said that, you just don't know what will happen. So many of these things, and I always try not to make predictions because I just don't. Unless the one thing I've said that definitively will happen is the case will be referred to the Court of Appeal, because it would be extraordinary if it wasn't. So I'm very confident that will happen. I can't say whether she would be kept under house arrest or bailed, but it's possible. So Carl says that he guarantees they will not try the case again. So, I can see the arguments in favour of not trying the case again, but I can't really predict what will happen. But all I can do is give my opinion. And my opinion is that I don't have a clue what's going to happen. And then there's prediction that Lucy could be out by 2027. So that's feasible, because given the timeline we've had for the Court of Appeal, it's quite possible that there wouldn't be a retrial, because once the case collapses, there could then be enormous pressure on the system to not retry her, having already destroyed her life, basically. We're still hopeful Lucy can have happiness and some form of happiness and fulfillment in the future, but clearly they've ruined her young life. So they would come under enormous pressure if they decide to retry the case. So that would be an aspect of consideration, and that could indeed result in Lucy being released as early as that. And let's, do everything we can to achieve that. And 1990 says, just hope there is accountability for this. It should never be allowed to happen again. So again, that's why I will try to use the small voice I have to help, and we can't just allow this to be brushed under the carpet. It's something that needs to be dealt with again in the future. For future cases. Still, the lady in Birmingham, the nurse in Birmingham, who supposedly they're still investigating her. That's not a good thing, obviously. If she was just straightforward guilty for the one poisoning of which she's accused, they would have charged her by now. So obviously that's not the case. It's either not straightforward or they're trying to find other cases. This has got to be stopped. It's got to be stopped now. It's got to be stopped for good. So the most important thing for me, more important, apart from the goal of Lucy's exoneration, but of all the other aspects of the case, like relate to the consultants, relate to the hospital, relate to the criminal justice system, relate to any other aspect of the case, the next most important thing for me is that there needs to be a very serious message sent to the police about how to investigate cases, because they have clearly done a terrible job on this case. And if that message isn't sent to them, this will just happen all over again. So we really must not only expose the truth of this case, but make sure that there are systemic changes as a result of what occurs in Lucy's case. The existing rejections by the Court of Appeal are ridiculous. Hopefully there is now public pressure on them to return a decent judgment. So I'm yet to cover the Court of Appeal. It is on my list of things to look at. Obviously, I agree with your views. Some of the arguments were surreal, frankly. But what I would say is that, in a way, it's a good thing, because Lucy's appeal at that time, or Lucy's application for leave to appeal, was quite weak in my estimation. It wouldn't have exonerated her because they didn't even look at all of the cases. Probably wouldn't have exonerated her. Very, very likely. So if she'd have been allowed, if it had been a little, excuse me, a little bit stronger, excuse me, she would have been allowed leave to appeal, then she would have appealed, then she would have lost her appeal, then it might have been harder to get another appeal. It all would have taken time. I mean, I'm glad that they rejected that, because we're in a much stronger position now with Mark MacDonald. And yes, Shu Lee was in that appeal, but look what they've been able to put together since then. And it's growing all the time, and awareness is growing all the time. It's going to grow further still. If she'd have been granted leave to appeal, that would have been a disaster, actually, ironically. So while I completely agree with you that the Court of Appeal verdict is odd, shall we say, I think it actually has worked out in Lucy's favour, strangely enough. Mark MacDonald seemed convinced otherwise, but I think he's working on the basis of standard procedure when there's absolutely nothing standard about this case. Yeah, that's a fair comment. As I say, I don't like to... Mark is very, very much more knowledgeable than me. Mark is very, very much more experienced than me. I don't wish to contradict someone who knows more than I do. I just report what he says, and where I can give an opinion, I do. This is my first time looking at miscarriage of justice, so I don't have any experience. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. The CPS and Cheshire Police cannot afford to be annihilated in a retrying of the case. So I agree with you that it would be very embarrassing for them, which is why I've described it as a coin toss. They've just got to decide which would be more embarrassing, not even bothering to retry the case, or going to court and just being absolutely destroyed. And there's a strong argument they won't retry the case, but I also know that they would find that enormously embarrassing, and they try to retry every case. They tried to retry the Justin Plummer case. Now, of course, in this instance, this is such a high-profile case that it's unlike anything else that's ever happened, really. This is enormous. So that's a strong argument that that there may not be a retrial, but then there are arguments for there being a retrial as well. Maybe I would even lean slightly towards there not being a retrial, slightly, but I definitely wouldn't rule it out, because it would be very embarrassing for the CPS if they don't retry the case. It's more likely the case doesn't get past Court of Appeal than retrial following overturn in my opinion. So that's a possibility as well. Yeah. Once she's acquitted, the government will need to immediately announce an inquiry to avoid a complete loss of public confidence. Yeah. There's going to be the inquiry to end all inquiries. Again, as I've said numerous times, this will be written indelibly into British history. This will be in British history hundreds of years from now. This will be studied in universities, and there'll have to be an almighty, almost, I forgot what the inquiry was for JFK, but that level of inquiry to deal with this, because it is an extraordinary situation that's been allowed to happen with enormous consequences. So there will be a massive, not even just one inquiry, there'll probably be multiple inquiries that look at the various areas of what has occurred. And again, we need to ensure that those aren't whitewashers. We need to ensure that they do a good job and hold them to account. I attended the Free Lucy outside the CCRC in Birmingham demonstration. I was amazed and concerned for standing up for Lucy may be inviting violent responses. So someone's asking me about whether I'm concerned for myself. Obviously, I considered this before I went public, but at the end of the day, I'm not worried, because anything can happen to you at any time in any situation, and I will not allow myself to be intimidated. I'm not. I'm a pacifist basically, so I'm not very good at fighting. That's for sure. I'm good at. I used to be good at running. I'm not even very good at running anymore. So, if anyone feels aggressive towards me, then they'll express that if they wish. But I will just do. I'm not that kind of person. I will not be aggressive towards anyone else, and I will express things in my usual measured tone. And anyone else can do whatever they want. I just concentrate on doing my work. I'll do it to the best of my ability. I'm here to try and help Lucy. I'll give everything I've got to do that. And when I decided that I would write a book, and then I knew I'd become public, I didn't expect to do YouTube, but here I am now. I'd already realized that I would become public at some point, and I had a discussion with myself about whether I was ready to do that, and I decided that I was, and I'm ready to accept the consequences of that. So it's not a problem for me. The Sun picked up on Mark McDonald's disclosure of telling Lucy that he believes she's innocent, and a reaction in the online comments, the majority were innocent. Guilters were jumped on by many. Yeah, and that trend will just get amplified more and more and more until virtually no one even feels comfortable with saying that she's guilty. I hope they get a decent case here this time. Well, I don't want to be critical of Ben Myers. I understand why people have been, and I have made critical remarks. Marcus very studiously avoided criticising him, so I feel that I should try to do that as well. But yeah, I'm reliably informed that they'll have no problem in getting a top KC. So hopefully that's going to help. Could those from Operation Hummingbird be questioned in the witness box at a retrial? Yeah, absolutely. That didn't happen in the original trial. I mean, there was a police representation, but I don't think there was any cross-examination of the police. I think really at that time it perhaps wasn't known the extent. This is why it is genuinely hard for the defence. So there are so many things they could have done, but they only get a certain period of time. They only have a certain amount of resources, and they've got to try to target the most effective things. So they might have thought, or Ben Myers might have thought, routing through a load of police documents is not going to be the best usage of my time. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think we've learned a lot of important stuff about the investigation. But absolutely, the defence can say, right, we want to call this police officer, this police officer, this police officer, if he wants to. Whether that would be necessary, whether there will be a retrial, we don't know. But yes, absolutely, they can be called. I mean, theoretically, I could be called, you could be called, anyone could. I think the legal system is still like Jaundice versus Jaundice in Bleak House, to make another Dickens reference. Yeah. So that would take some explanation. Bleak House is a long book. But yeah, it's a good reference. The the way they speak in court is ridiculous and frankly retch-inducing. Yes, some. I find it really distasteful. I mean, you're referencing these comments I've made about the whole way that people speak in court and the whole deference of it. I agree with you. It's totally inimical to my nature and what I believe to be right. So I would find that very difficult as a barrister. I still believe the case will collapse, Chris, as there is simply no evidence at all. That's quite possible. That's quite possible. Let's hope it does. Let's hope it collapses in the Court of Appeal. Let's hope there's a quick referral. Let's hope Lucy's out well before she's 40. And let's hope we can move on to the inquiry and the phase of reformation of the system. The way nurses are supposed to behave, speak, act, respect doctors is ridiculous too. Yeah, I don't know as much about that because I've never worked in a hospital, but I just believe in equality. And by that I mean real equality, where people just treat each other with respect, and everyone treats each other the same way. And if you do that, if you just think whatever human being is in front of me, I'll just treat them the same way as I treat anyone else. Maybe sometimes, there might be situations where you might have to make some small allowances for certain issues. If someone's in a wheelchair, as an example. But even then, I mean, my next door neighbour, I grew up next to someone in a wheelchair, and he just used to go down the pub and get absolutely ratted on a Friday night. I used to see him in there all the time. We weren't really, really close, but he'd always say hello, and he'd be around the pool table, and just treat everyone the same way. That's what I believe in. If there are experts for the defence, there isn't a cat in hell's chance it meets the evidential test for the CPS to push for another prosecution. I would tend to agree. I just don't want to rule that out. I don't want to say to people, right, there definitely isn't going to be a retrial. Lucy's going to be exonerated in this date, because that would be very disappointing if it doesn't happen. I would always, if I'm working as a professional, I always try to under-promise and over-deliver, and I'm trying to take that principle into the prediction regarding a retrial. I'd rather dampen down your hopes and then we get a better situation than I've suggested, than say, oh, Lucy's going to be out of this date and then she isn't. So please bear that in mind. The one big fly in the ointment is Thirlwall. Why have they pushed it back yet again? I wouldn't like to make any predictions about what Thirlwall is going to do next. It's a very curious inquiry to be. I think that's the most generous way I can possibly describe it. I mean, an inquiry that systematically ignores its own documents is not a great inquiry. Lady Thirlwall has really embarrassed herself by saying that the opposition to the conviction is noise. I mean, that was an extraordinary statement, and I think she recognised by the end of the inquiry that she shouldn't have said that, because she was a lot more respectful at the end. The people that wrote to her and the people that are speaking out cannot be described as noise. These are professors, doctors, experts. They cannot. You can't say, "Oh, it's just a load of noise." Embarrassing. So she's put herself in a very difficult position by that very unwise statement. Who knows what's going to happen next? One can only imagine. Obviously, we know what should happen. The inquiry should be postponed indefinitely, obviously. But as to what is going to happen, I really don't know. Is it the case that Cheshire Police won't be going after anybody and are now aware various Cheshire Police individuals might be the subject of being gone after? The police usually act with complete impunity, whatever they do. They usually weasel their way out of everything, so I don't know if they'll be that worried, but they must be concerned at this stage about their investigations, surely. Because when I saw the Operation Hummingbird quote-unquote documentary, I used the term very loosely, I thought at that time, surely there's got to be some dissent within Cheshire Police. Surely there was someone saying, hold on a second, what the hell are we doing? this is completely ridiculous. By now, someone must be. There's got to be someone in there who's saying, "Was our investigation actually any good?" There's got to be someone, surely. So that could influence their behaviour, but I think they're just in self-preservation mode, to be honest. So we'll have to see what happens to Cheshire Police. Christopher, you are a legend. Your videos are great and have put pressure on the establishment to do the right thing. That's very kind, Carl. That really means a lot. You were obviously on YouTube a long time before me, and I'm really grateful to the people that were here before myself, because they put their face out there before I did. So I'm not as brave as you, obviously, or others that did it before me. I just felt, and even when I started doing YouTube, I didn't think I should do it from day one. I thought I should steadily build up to it and until I was ready. And then I thought, well, I'd like to start doing interviews. I know I can bring people onto the channel. Okay, it's time for me to show my face and tell people what my name is. So yeah, I really appreciate your comments. They're very much appreciated. And I appreciate all the support and praise that I've received, which is way beyond anything that I expected. I tried to get some leaflets on the 19 Nurses website, so 19 Nurses will help you with that, hopefully. I did psychology at uni, so we did statistics. As soon as it was clear the prosecution relied on stats, I was suspicious, which would be a natural reaction. All the statisticians have done the same, and it clearly is a major problem in the original prosecution. And they, as has rightly been stated in the comments, they absolutely cannot present the same case, because on day one, they could literally, I mean, if I was the barrister, I'd be tempted to call all my people up. I mean, I wouldn't do this because it's not dignified in a British court, but you could call X number of statisticians, trash the shift chart, and you could literally just hold it up and go, okay, we've dealt with that now. Let's see if the prosecution wish to refer to that shift chart ever again. That's the prosecution case from the original trial gone, because they used inference from that shift chart over and over and over again. And that can just be torn up figuratively and literally even on day one. So that's why I think it was Carl who said they can't use this. They absolutely cannot use the same prosecution case. So they'd have to come up with something new, definitely. My husband, who is a solicitor, says that Mal McDonald could represent Lucy in the Court of Appeal and that it doesn't have to be a KC. That's correct. He can, but he won't. He's informed us of this already. So, and then Joe says, scrub that, he's changed his mind. It does have to be a KC. Well, actually, I think his first opinion is correct, according to what I've heard from someone who is very knowledgeable and has been to many court cases. He told me that he's seen a junior barrister present the case, but it didn't go well. So the ideal thing is to have a KC, but you can present with a junior barrister, apparently. Was anybody swayed towards guilty by some of the troll MSM propaganda stuff in the early days as I was? That's a really good question. I wasn't. I kind of explained my reason for why I believed Lucy was guilty for half an hour, and then after half an hour, I started to question it. So that was my 30 minutes of believing Lucy was guilty. So I'd already, as soon as I started to investigate this, it looked like it could easily be a miscarriage of justice. And ever since then, everything I've seen has pointed to that. So I didn't see anything in the mainstream media that made me think I was wrong. I don't know if that means, I don't know what that says about me, but once I start to believe I'm correct about something, if I see the evidence to back it up, then I trust my instinct, I guess. It will be one way of describing it. But I didn't see anything to change my mind. I remember watching the panorama on the day it came out and thinking, well, that has provided nothing of any substance whatsoever. If anything, I just think it's more likely that it's a miscarriage of justice now. Just go a bit further down. I'm doing deep dives on babies not indicted. Seems like there are a couple of these that got a type of antibiotic you use when you have bacterial meningitis. So yeah, so add that to your list, your ever-growing list of things to discuss. Sounds very interesting. Hi, do we know if the police went expert witness shopping after not getting the opinion they wanted that agreed with Jerome and Breary? Then along came Dewi Evans. No, they didn't, because Dewi Evans was the first person they spoke to, and they never spoke to anyone else. Mark McDonald could appear as a junior who would not be frozen out of the Court of Appeal. That's correct. Evening, Chris. Maybe you could look into police investigations, because even the Dennis Nielsen one wasn't great, since those at the top failed some victims. Yeah, that's something that I would really love to do. I'm actually holding off on doing general miscarriage of justice, and I'd like to do some intelligent true crime content at some point, but I'm holding off on doing that just in case Lucy is charged on the tube extubation cases. That looks less and less likely, of course, but there is an outside possibility that could happen, in which case I won't be allowed to talk about Lucy's case, or I risk contempt of court, so I'd have to talk about other things. So that'd be a time to talk about the Dennis Nielsen case. So the book Killing for Company that's written on Dennis Nielsen is a tremendous work, in my opinion. So I really recommend that book. Thank you for all your hard work, Julie says. It's absolutely my pleasure. I'm very grateful for your support. Hi, Chris and everyone in the chat. I'm joining you all from Spain. So I don't know what the weather's like in Spain, but it's not been very Spanish climate here today in England. It was pretty chilly, but I always get wrapped up warm with Keeks, and you get used to it after a while. It's wore off a duck's back to me when it's cold, to be honest, and rainy. Just becomes my normal. Someone else saying the videos on the 19 Nurses channel are excellent, which I endorse entirely. Hi, Chris. Mark mentioned that Lucy reads her mail. I wonder if this is the mail sent to prison. So he did say send mail to prison, to the prison, if you wish for Lucy to read your mail. What I should say is there's a specific process that you have to do with writing your name and address and prisoner number, not your prisoner number, obviously. So if someone would, I think 19 Nurses might want to write that in the chat, or I don't know the precise process myself. So yeah, do write to her at the prison. Hi to ACL Moss, good to see you. Yeah, we're just going a bit further down. We're still, these are all comments about sending to the prison. The Court of Appeal was very dismissive of Dr. Shu Lee. The judgment shows that they did not understand what he had said to them. Will they change the next time this goes to the court? So you say they did not understand. I would say, was it that they didn't understand, or was it that they didn't want to understand? I would say it's the latter, to be honest. Will that change the next time this goes to court? So public pressure plays an enormous role. So at the time, there wasn't the same public pressure. There wasn't the same joined up process. There wasn't the same level of experts, of course. Let me just say this while we're on the topic. We do need to give Ben Myers credit for getting in contact with Shu Lee, or listening to him, whether Shu Lee may initiate the contact. Yes, he could have done that sooner, but that has started a chain of events that leads to where we are today. So he definitely does deserve a little bit of credit for that. As to whether that will change, they're going to be under. But if they just say we're going to dismiss the person who wrote the evidence on the only diagnostic paper, and he's done more research, and he's printed another paper, it was used in court. It was not only the primary diagnostic source, it was the only diagnostic source, but we're just going to completely ignore that, even with this enormous raft of experts all saying that this diagnosis is very, very poor. It would be extraordinary if they ignored it, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. 50 million on nonsense, absolutely. Staggering the case costs so much, and all they produce was bogus hearsay evidence, non-contemporaneous notes written years after alleged events, and toddler-level statistics. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's extraordinary. The police investigation basically took 5 years, because although they denied Lucy bail in 2020, they still were doing investigations, because they actually filmed the neonatal unit, the video that I did a video on it a while ago. That was in 2021 that they filmed it. So they were still doing investigation and still doing preparation for court and still preparing the documents for court 5 years after it began. I can't see how it can possibly take that long, but I think competence comes into the equation. Just let's go a bit further down. I first learned the miscarriage when this popped up on my YouTube. So David, it's highly probable Lucy Letby is innocent. As I looked into it, I quickly realised Lucy's 99.9% innocent. Yeah. So it's good that you've learnt of it in that way. That's really interesting. It just shows you the importance of media coverage and the importance of getting these things out into the public domain. I would rather say she's 100% innocent because there is zero evidence to implicate her. It should never have gone to trial. So the only reason that I don't say that is because I don't want to be guilty of what Dr. Evans does. Dr. Evans says he's 100% certain that she's guilty, which is an utterly preposterous statement. It's just simply impossible. So I don't want to be guilty of doing the inverse. Of course, I am absolutely certain as I can possibly be now, that Lucy Letby is innocent. And I've believed that ever since I saw the blue Post-it note that I've mentioned a few times. When I saw that note, I knew that Lucy Letby was innocent because it just doesn't make any sense in any other context. So, I'm as certain as I can possibly be, and I'll always argue in favour of that, and I'm perfectly willing to say that Lucy's innocent. Let's go a bit further down. I'm just going to have to turn the radio off. Just bear with me 1 second, because it's just come on. I set an alarm for myself yesterday. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry, babes. Sorry, babes. I didn't mean to. Whoops, the trolley key goes like. You're tough, aren't you? That doesn't bother you, does it? You're hard as nails. Yeah. I had a meeting yesterday, so I put a radio alarm on to remind me. So I just had to turn that off. Sorry about that. Has the NHS been brought to the ground so private healthcare can be brought in? I know a lot. So the person here is talking about worked for the NHS for 40 years and it's changed and business driven. This is from 19 nurses. I know a lot of people believe that. It's very clear that there's been a lot of privatisation of various aspects of the NHS through the back door, through public-private partnerships and stuff like that. And I know a lot of the infrastructure of the NHS is not even owned by the country. It was all built under private finance initiatives, which is a type of agreement where big companies and big corporations end up making a lot of money out of public sector projects, basically. So I don't think I know enough to say definitively that that's true, but it's certainly a credible argument. But I couldn't say for sure. Hi, Chris. Can anything be done about the contamination of evidence, e.g., like with Debbie Evans being able to see witness doctor statements, then change his reports to fit this numerous times? So there's not a lot we can do about this court case except rely on the Court of Appeal. I hoped some other politicians may speak out, but it seems that that's not going to happen at this point in time. So we're reliant on the criminal justice system. I definitely believe that when the inquiries that we've discussed earlier occur, it should be highlighted that Dr. Evans has written over 80 reports. I mean, I said it was a lot more than 30 in a previous interview, so it's over 80, and there's supplementary reports. That is an extraordinary number, and as we know, many of those. I said there are 25 reports when he knows the name of Lucy Letby, but those are just the 25 reports that I can prove were written because they were mentioned specifically in court and the dates were mentioned. There could be more than 25. Obviously, that shouldn't happen when the guy's moving events around, making different diagnoses, changing important material aspects of the reports. I mean, I don't think I can truly say what I feel about him because, I don't want to be rude. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But I think the content that I've made should indicate how I feel about him, and there has to be an inquiry into how he was allowed to run this case, and how he was allowed to change his opinion so many times, and how he was allowed to submit so many different reports over so many different periods, changing diagnoses, moving things around, and so on. There has to be an enormous inquiry into that, and the police, as an organisation, not just Cheshire Police, police across the entire country need to be made aware of how to investigate a case, because it's very clear that Cheshire Police have no idea how to run this investigation. Let's go a bit further down. Can't read that out, sorry. Let's go a bit further down. Yeah, so Ruth is making the point about American healthcare. Yeah. The NHS is still better than the American system, undoubtedly, undeniably. I don't think anyone could argue otherwise, and that's why I personally would be against switching to a system of private insurance, even though there are countries. I know in Scandinavian countries they have private insurance and it works very well, but they are in a very different economic position to us. I mean, I must say, I always wondered. I always cite jokes in the Simpsons, but you always get Mr. Burns in the Simpsons making references to, oh, you could ride the tram into town, get a pie and a cup of coffee, go to the matinee, and then get an ice cream on the way home for a nickel, and stuff like this. And so these ridiculous claims about what you'd be able to get for a certain amount of money, and it's obviously a joke about inflation and how the value of things changes over time. And when I was in Manchester, I reflected on, I have now reached the age where if I tell people what things cost when I was young, it sounds ridiculous, because when I was in the hotel, I ordered a pint of it was pale ale, I think, and it was £7.20, and I just thought, I used to go out for a night out with £7.20. It used to be like, when I first had no money, it would be like, I was a kid. I'd go out for £5 with a night out, and I'd have a few pints of Tetleys. I'd never drink Tetleys now. It was dire, but it was the only thing I could afford. Like, literally, you didn't want to buy lager because it was more expensive. So I'd have, I think a pint of Tetleys would have been about £1.20. And then I'd have a bag of prawn crackers. That was my supper on the way home. That was like a night out for £5. Now it's £7.20 just for one pint in this establishment. So, it's so many things have changed with regards to the pricing of things, and that obviously all impacts on the need for the NHS. There's a need. If we were to switch to a system similar as America in this country, there is no doubt that some people would be without healthcare coverage. Now, maybe we wouldn't be as brutal as the United States, where they don't have the welfare system that can anyway be compared to Britain, and maybe we'd be a little bit more forgiving. But if we weren't, and if tomorrow night, let's say Keir Starmer stood up, that's it, the NHS is done, we can't fund it anymore. Obviously we can't. We're putting taxes up for everyone. We don't know how we're going to pay pensions. We have to keep pushing the pension age up. We're in an enormous amount of debt. We can't balance our books. We're just scrapping the NHS. You're going to have to get a private insurance to have healthcare, otherwise you won't get healthcare. If that happened tomorrow, there would be millions of people without healthcare overnight, undoubtedly. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously. And I've probably discussed that for long enough, so I should probably move on to another question. Let's go a bit further down. So someone's saying here, Evans isn't part of the prosecution, but it doesn't stop him from opening his mouth. I think he loves his celebrity status now. Well, he's a glutton for punishment if he loves his celebrity status, because he just makes himself look stupid every time he says something. I agree with you that he's just someone who cannot accept criticism. So if you're going to put yourself in the public eye, which he did, he voluntarily did that. He didn't have to appear in Raj Persaud. He didn't have to go on TV on the news channels. He wanted to be on it because he wanted to be patted on the back. He'd had political ambitions. He still wants to be involved with Plaid Cymru, I believe, and the Yes campaign for Welsh independence. So he thought, oh, this will be good publicity for me. There's no other reason. None of the other witnesses did it. He wanted to be known as the primary person who'd put Lucy Letby away, which of course he is. And then he has created this publicity for himself. So therefore, at that point, he's a public figure. And a lot of the criticism has come from that, and quite simply, if you're going to do that, if you're going to go on television, and I've considered this myself, and if you're going to be interviewed, etc., you've got to accept that people are entitled to their opinion, and they can say horrible things about you, and you just got to suck it up. It's as simple as that. He can't do that because he cannot accept any criticism. So yeah, I agree with you. He will never. If he's criticised, he will respond inevitably. Someone saying Sally Clark was out in a very short period of time, which is true. So hopefully Lucy could come out more, in a shorter time frame than would be involved with a retrial. You remain admirably calm with all this, Chris. I've been known to rant and swear about the Lucy case in the privacy of my own home. So there are moments when I get angry, of course, and your reaction is very natural. I think it's important for me to try and remain level-headed and try and stick to the facts. I will say as well, there are occasional moments where I get emotional. It's usually, the funny thing is, it's usually when I'm explaining it to someone new who doesn't know anything about it, because it's only at that point that the enormity of what we're involved in kind of hits me. And that's when I will start to get a little bit emotional about it. And there are moments when I get angry, I've felt very angry with some of the things Dr. Evans has said, but I just know it's important for me to remain focused and as analytical as I can. So, yeah, I'm not always as calm as I appear, but certainly when I'm presenting and certainly when I'm doing these live streams, the last thing I want to be doing is ranting and swearing. And I made it a rule for myself not to swear on the channel, so I've tried not to do that. I've said a few words that you wouldn't say on TV, but try not to be profane. And then, hopefully these are videos that you could show to a 16-year-old. It may not be appropriate for a younger child, but if you're a parent and your child's saying, what are you watching, what are you interested in, and they're of a suitable age and you can make that parental decision, I'd like to think you could show them my content and it would be appropriate. That's always my aim anyway. So more comments about the retrial, so I'll probably skip them because I've probably gone about that enough already. It's debatable whether CPS will have more or less about the retrial as well. Okay, so next question is, can we expect any bombshells in the next few weeks? So with some luck, I've got some exciting things coming up next week. So I won't spoil those at this point in time. I'll just say that they'll be worth looking out for. The delay in court cases and/or charging decisions also affects the innocent, leading to long-term damage. A failing justice system should be a concern for all of us. I agree completely. That's Nigel commenting there. It's a big problem. It's a big problem, but when you have we've discussed a lot of systemic issues today. It's a perfect storm. When you have all those things together, it becomes very hard to deal with the backlog of cases that you're dealing with. The reason the system is falling behind is because the system is no good. I remember being in London and I couldn't bear to walk back. I flew from Heathrow Airport, and this was a few years ago now, and I just could not bear to walk back through Heathrow Airport, because to me that's just hell on earth. I love being on the aeroplane, but the airports I don't like. And I remember being outraged. There was there was a restaurant made by Heston Blumenthal, and I just remember seeing porridge, a bowl of porridge in that restaurant, and thinking, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever seen in my life. What this costs? I think it was like 13 quid or something. Probably more now. It's probably 20 quid now. But anyway, I just couldn't bear walking past through Heathrow Airport, so I got in a taxi. That was the most expensive taxi I've ever gotten in my life, because they transported me from Heathrow to the actual. So it must have been like the railway station that I was travelling from, which I couldn't travel from Heathrow. So St Pancras it would have been, and the taxi driver was very nice. He was chatting with me, and I was explaining to him what I did and stuff like that. And we'd been in the taxi for like ages, and he said, "Oh, by the way, that's where," he was pointing out, and he was going, "That's where HS2 stops." And I was like, "But it's nowhere near London." And that's cost billions. So I don't know where it goes to now. I don't know what the plans are in the future. But many, many things have gone wrong in this country to create the existing situation. And the backlog of cases is just a reflection of that, unfortunately. So someone's saying that this is a systemic sunk cost fallacy, which I agree with. And you're right, no one wants to admit a mistake. Again, I said we should get gold medals for sweeping things under the carpet. The other thing as well is we should get gold medals for refusing to admit that anyone's ever made a mistake, which it seems to be like the least tenable thing that anyone will ever do. Is just say, "Oh, I was wrong." So someone mentioned Lucy Letby was out in 8 years, so could be a similar time frame for Lucy if we can get it right. It's a pity they don't go to the biblical premise. Let a matter be established in the presence of 2 or 3 witnesses. The expert witnesses didn't witness anything. Yeah, the only witness who saw anything was Jairam, and we know that his account was not very reliable. And of course, historically, that's what a witness was, and that's what a jury of your peers was. Literally, a jury of your peers who knew you from the local area. This is just something that, again, is indicative of this antiquated system. The press coverage will explode if CCRC refers to Court of Appeal. Then maybe someone will make the Lucy's Innocent documentary, so that is a big hope, obviously. And I agree with you that the coverage will definitely escalate at that time. Someone said in the comments somewhere that Vera Beard was at the 19 Nurses Conference. Is that true? No, it's not true. She was at the Westminster event that Stephanie spoke at, that John O'Quigley spoke at. Tom Hayes, who was exonerated by the Supreme Court, he spoke at it. And the fourth speaker was a professor whose name I always forget. But yeah, Vera Beard was at that event. I actually know that Vera Beard attended another relevant event recently, but unfortunately I can't discuss that with you. But she is definitely being actively seen and actively looking at things and being aware that the job of the CCRC is not just to turn everything away. So I applaud her for that. Now she needs to, and the organisation needs to deliver on this sentiment. I know Lucy's innocent, but just wondering, is there a precedent of a convicted murderer being allowed out on house arrest whilst awaiting an appeal? Yeah, so that's what I was wondering as well, Joe. I don't know if there is, and it would be a big decision to make, of course. I would not like to predict what would happen. There is a very strong moral and ethical argument, but if the scenario I've discussed occurred, the Court of Appeal, the case collapses, the prosecution insists on a retrial, there's going to be a very strong campaign from some very prominent voices for her to come out of prison on house arrest. Now, whether that can happen or not, I can't tell you, but I do believe that it's a distinct possibility. Hello to David Peterson. Hello to Sarah Ann White, who's from New Zealand. So as far away as it's possible to be, I think, from England. Just to bring something up that's been niggling away in the back of my mind, that is, are we sure that Beverly Allett is guilty? So I don't like to discuss this because I don't know anything about it at all. I did allow Richard Gill to discuss it when he was on the channel. I also haven't discussed Ben Geen. I haven't discussed Ben Geen's case at all because I don't know anything about it. I've discussed Colin Norris a bit because I've spoken to one of the main people who was involved in Colin Norris's case in some depth, and I know him fairly well, and he told me a lot about that case. So I don't like to talk about cases I know nothing about. There is a little bit about that case in Richard Gill's one of his interviews. I've done 3. It's either the first one or the second one. I forget which one it is, but I can't talk about it because I literally know nothing, and I'm just focused on Lucy's case. The only precedent for release before the appeal concludes is Lindy Chamberlain in Australia, as far as I know. That's interesting. I can't. Yeah, and it says there have been cases. Someone else says there have been cases where convicted murderers were released on house arrest while awaiting retrial. So that's interesting. I can't remember who pointed it out a while ago, perhaps Peter Elston, but it was pointed out that Lucy would be in an even stronger position if the CPS brought a case against the managers. Yeah, that's possible. Again, we don't know exactly what will occur, so it requires a degree of prediction. But I heard some news today that you will all hear soon, or an opinion that made me feel even more optimistic. So you will all hear from this person soon. Mark Wilkinson notes that Sally Challen and Sean Jenkins both were granted bail with restrictive conditions. So yeah, you'd expect restrictive conditions, but that will be a hell of a lot better for Lucy than where she is now. Scooby says, when will your book be available, Chris? So I hope to announce some news on this imminently, but I can't say any more at this point in time, but I really hope that there will be some very imminent news. So Mark is mentioning that there are a lot of people watching. There's now 140, so all of these live streams have been very well supported, which I really appreciate. So I do them to try and give something back to all the people that support me. I enjoy doing them. They're really enjoyable to do, and it's nice to connect with people. But yeah, what he's mentioning is there are not a lot of thumbs up and likes. So if people want to like the video, that would be helpful, of course. The police should have been made to give evidence on all the tenuous evidence they accumulated and how they circumvented the original post-mortems due to there being so many breaches in the process. So this is something that could have happened. Again, you're going to hear some opinions on this in the very near future. It may be, as I described earlier, that Ben Myers decided we're not going to benefit from questioning the police. I don't know. And I agree that there could be an inquiry into the police, as Trevor has stated here. It should happen. Absolutely, it should be. There should be. So Sarah is saying that she has an example of deference that is still expected towards consultants. I used to work in theatre. So, I mean, so out of date. I mean, we're living in the year 2025. I mean, that just shouldn't happen. It should just be, I'm here to do a job. You're here to do a job. I might get paid a bit more for my job than you get paid for your job, but we're all equals. We're all on the same team. Let's treat each other with respect. The idea of this deference and it just goes against everything I believe in. So I just find it unbearable. Yeah. So someone's saying about Thirlwell being worried about putting a name to this. I would agree. She must be somewhat concerned. I would be. What's this about David Lammy abolishing juries? So this is something that lots of people have predicted. So I was asked my opinion about this recently. I've not expressed it on the channel yet. I'm honestly, I'm not in favour of this happening at all, but I'm also a little bit ambivalent because I don't think juries necessarily aid justice as much as we would like them to. I don't think they necessarily do. But also, I don't think abolishing juries necessarily aids justice. The most important thing for me is transparency. Transparency is key. As I've said already in this live stream, it's ridiculous that we're scrabbling around trying to find details of a very important court case when it could easily have been recorded. And if you out of the two, if I had a choice tomorrow, you give me a choice, right? And particularly if I was, let's say I was the defendant, and you've got a choice. The choice is that you can have a jury but not have the case recorded, or you can go in front of a judge, and a panel of judges or a judge makes a decision, but the entire thing is recorded. I'd take the latter all day long. And I think that would, for me, that would be the two things that are essential: the way expert witness evidence is dealt with, and transparency of the court process. Because Dr. Evans has repeatedly hidden behind, you weren't in court, you weren't in court. Now, if this was in America, he literally couldn't say that, because we could have figuratively been in court, because we would have seen what was said in court. And that, for me, is the number one issue. Even more than expert witness evidence, that's important, very important. But if you have transparency, we would have seen, imagine if you'd seen Dr. Evans on video, or even just on audio, and you've seen me reading out the transcripts that we do have, the transcripts that we can get hold of. You've seen how what his performance was like. This would have happened. It would be even quicker that people would doubt this conviction. So the abolition of juries, I understand why people think it's controversial, and I don't support it. And I should clarify as well that in Lucy's case, there still would have been a jury, because they're not proposing it for the most serious crimes, just for lesser crimes, as it would be described. But transparency and expert witness evidence are more important than whether or not there's a jury, for sure. Could it be the CCRC and the CO Court of Appeal are a little closer than we're led to believe? I mean, is it possible they're in touch with each other? Once it's passed to the Court of Appeal, it might not take too long, possibly. All I'm going on is what Mark told me, and he gave me, well, I say told me, that I heard him say, and these are ballpark figures. So I can't give you a very credible steer on that. I've told you the information that I have, and I don't know any more than that, I'm afraid. The report from Thirlwell has been put back twice now. I'm sure Thirlwell are all in touch. I agree. Saying CPS, CCRC, Court of Appeal, Thirlwell are in touch. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. And maybe, who knows, we might get a referral before April. But Mark says possibly not. So we'll just have to wait and see. No one knows. So I agree with the comments on Thirlwell. It has been a very regrettably poor inquiry, in which they have systematically ignored their own documents. It's just very, very disappointing. And I know for a fact there have been documents submitted that weren't published, which is very difficult to defend. Cheshire Police. So there is the possibility that Cheshire Police could blame things on consultants and Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans is, as I've said previously, very vulnerable indeed. The whole case was a total fabrication. So I do believe, Denise, that, as I've said before, I do believe the consultants were genuinely concerned at one point. What you have to understand is, I went over their document the other day. Now, so much of that has been ruled out of the case, but when they went to the police, they were asking for that all to be investigated. So they may have looked at the whole picture of the unit, and even though they should have been definitely more aware of what they did wrong, and the errors and the problems and the sanitary conditions and all of the issues that we know about now. They should have been far more aware of that. They should have been far more conscious of that. There's no doubt about that. But for whatever reason, they were, I believe, genuinely concerned. So I think it began with a confirmation bias. And then the police have allowed confirmation bias to run through the whole investigation. They've been grossly incompetent, in my view. So, question here about my book. So, I've written a book on Lucy's case. I finished this some time ago. I hope to be able to announce the full details of this fairly soon. So, do look out for that. You won't miss it when it does happen. The Post Office Horizon Systems Offences Bill was passed in Parliament to quash convictions of those affected by the Post Office Horizon scandal. Surely they can do the same for Lucy. So I think I answered this. I've answered this in a forthcoming video. So I won't answer that now because I've answered that in a forthcoming video. I did see your question. I assume it was you that asked this question originally. So you will see your question answered soon. I can't see them bring any further charges and finding any more parents who will go along with them in a new narrative. So yeah, I think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't like to rule it out completely. I'm always aware of the fact that that's possible. So hello to Simone. Great you're doing another good live. So really good to see you here. It was nice to meet you, albeit briefly, in Manchester. Vivian says, I wondered for the best part of 10 seconds if Lucy was guilty. After all, on the day she was reported to have agreed that insulin had been administered to 2 babies. So, yeah, that kind of reporting could be misleading. Obviously, as I've mentioned, I never heard anything about this, or I didn't pay any attention, certainly, until the guilty verdict was in, the day of the conviction. So I didn't follow the trial or see the reporting until later. So my first interaction with the case was hearing Radio 5 Live report. So ironically, it was the BBC that convinced me that this could be a miscarriage of justice. And Simone saying Lucy's definitely innocent, known since day one. So I was very strongly convinced that it could be a miscarriage of justice on day one. I mean, other people have got more healthcare experience than me, and I didn't have that, so I wanted a little bit more time to be certain. But when I sat and watched the panorama, I've been researching for 5 hours. It's incredible the way your life can change. Like, I would have been sat here ghostwriting a book or doing research for a book that I was ghostwriting, just doing my normal work, and I just happened to go down and just hear on the radio. Now, if I hadn't have heard that, I probably wouldn't be here now. I'm sure I would have heard about the Lucy Letby case. Maybe there's a possibility I would have got involved. I don't know. But it was just that prompted me, and it's amazing what can happen in your life to change it. But I certainly was very convinced very early on that it could be a miscarriage of justice. And yeah, I think people with more experience than me may have been able to tell even quicker than myself. So someone says, I then immediately thought there must be other explanations, as indeed there are, which of course is correct. Lucy had no choice but to agree the supposed insulin poisonings because her defence had a pre-trial meeting with the prosecution and agreed that poisonings must have happened, which is true. Of course, it was a rather underhand strategy, you might argue, from the prosecution. So Simone says, I believe the NHS is going to be privatised. I heard this from someone whose husband is a doctor, and the strikes are all part of the plan. So again, I can't comment on that, but when the NHS is in such a bad state, and when you have a leader of a political party saying that this should happen, it's clear that there's a climate in which this could occur. So I hope it doesn't happen, but we'll just have to wait and see what occurs and deal with that as and when it does happen. What they've done to Lucy is, I can't read all that out, but I agree that Lucy it's an enormous penalty that she has been forced to endure. All I can say to you is, I mean, one of the sad things we heard in Manchester and it was really hard to hear this news, was that, Mark said Lucy has recovered a lot and Lucy has hope and she's not the same broken person she was when he met her. He told this story of meeting Lucy, and he sort of told it before, but he embellished it a little bit. So he said he met her and Lucy was very defensive because of a loss of trust, as would be understandable. And he said, Lucy, he met Lucy, hello, and Lucy immediately, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why me? What was the comment you made? Why me? And he said, because I think you're innocent. And then Lucy apparently said, you think I'm innocent? And then he said to her, let me rephrase that, I know you're innocent. And then Lucy just started crying. And you can, so this is a moment where I feel emotional now, but I'm not going to cry. But yeah, that makes me feel emotional, because can you imagine what it was like for her? The hell that she'd been through. And this is the first time she'd heard someone who wasn't a blood relative say, I believe you're innocent. Can you imagine what that was like for her? It's so we're giving her enormous comfort, hope, psychological assistance by supporting her, and people that are writing to her, and everything that people are doing for her is helping. It's helping get her out of this state that she was in, which was Mark described her as a broken psychological state, and we're getting her back into a state where she's healthier. But Mark did say, I haven't seen the Lucy from the pictures. I just haven't seen her, and I don't know if that Lucy will exist again. And she will change. And Stephanie talks about this as well, about how when you go through immensely traumatic events, you do change as a person, and you build yourself back up, but you can't be the same person again. But I also still believe that Lucy can have happiness and fulfillment and find purpose. Absolutely believe that. So we just got to keep fighting for her, and eventually she'll be in a position where she can live a life that has more meaning, more purpose, and more happiness. And she must be reunited with her parents while her father is still here, because he's getting older, and he may live for a very long time yet, but we don't know. And we need to make sure that they can see each other face to face and not in a prison. So I'm just scrolling a little bit down. So there's a comment about Cheshire Police working on Sally Clark. Obviously, someone's mentioned the Wilmslow cases, and now Lucy's case. So that's absolutely true. So someone's making a very good point here, that the solicitor should have stepped in during the arrests and prevented her from answering questions related to the insulin. I don't know what a solicitor was doing. He certainly did very little during those interviews from what I've seen, almost nothing. And you're there. Your whole reason you're there as a solicitor is to advise your client and ensure that your client doesn't say anything that would be unwise. And that even applies to guilty people. That applies to people who are guilty. Your solicitor is there to defend you, regardless of whether they think you're innocent or guilty. That's not their place. Is not to assess whether or not you're innocent. It's there to defend you and give you the best defense that you can. And very odd to observe what happened with a solicitor in that meeting, for sure. So someone's saying you only have to have a bit of common sense and life experience. A lot of people are just too busy to look at the case. It only takes a few minutes to seize a miscarriage of justice. So this is one of the reasons that I've written a book, is to try and, I know a book's not going to appeal to everyone, but it's trying to get the case in front of as many people as possible, to make it mainstream, so that people know what we know to be the case. And you're right that people are busy in their own lives, and they haven't got the time to invest in the case. So the intention is to try and correct as many of the myths as you can, and give people a proper perspective on what actually occurred in the hospital, and the truth of the matter as a whole. There's no excuse for Cheshire Police. They clearly have no idea how to run an investigation. They have to be the most gullible police force ever. They believe anything clearly. So I agree. I think it's not just being gullible, although I do agree with that. But the proper processes and procedures that should occur weren't in place. So when Brewery and Jairam walk into their office, they have to question them, obviously. They should be thinking immediately, why is this person in my office saying we're concerned about this nurse? There was no investigation into circumstances at the hospital. There was no investigation into Brewery and Jairam. It's completely unacceptable and completely incompetent. I can't describe it any other way. So someone saying about she had a duty solicitor and she might as well not have been there. Absolutely true. I want to have faith this will all work out in the end, but I just feel that too many people would be unwilling to admit they got it wrong. So there are barriers, but that's why we need to make this as big as we can. That's why I've said since day one, I've said this over and over again. I've said it again this evening. I'll keep hammering this message home. It's all about public pressure. There's already big public pressure. We need to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. We need to keep it in the news. If this was just a quiet little appeal in the background with no media coverage or very little, and no one knew anything about it, and there hadn't been any documentaries, etc., Lucy would be in prison for a very long time. With the public pressure, Mark MacDonald described it as the Court of Appeal know that the eyes of the world will be on them. And it's important for us to do our bit with campaigning still to try and just to ensure that this is kept in the minds of the general public and in front of the eyes of the general public, and that we reach more and more people. And that's all we can do. Should Cheshire Police staff and Cheshire Refuse Collection Services have their roles swapped? Well, we don't know if Cheshire Police would do a good job of taking the bins out and doing refuse collection. So I think we shouldn't be too hasty as to do that, because that's a very important service, of course. This is the absolute stuff of nightmares. It really is. Yeah, hard to disagree. Hi to Claudia from Italy. Lucy Letby must be freed. I agree. Thank you for following the case from Italy. We really appreciate it. And it's good to see you here. I can't read that out, sorry. My kids just asked me what I was watching. I tried to explain it to them, but all they wanted to know is if I got a shout out. They were happy to hear that I did. So shout out to the kids of So Hard to Find a Good unused handle. If you want me to shout, the other week I shouted out to someone's grandparents. So if anyone wants me to shout out to their family members or anyone that's watching with them or their pets or anything else, please do mention them. I'm happy to do that. It's not a problem. Just going a bit further down now. So more criticism of the solicitor, which I agree with. Someone's talking about Brewer and Jairam being held accountable. Yeah, I agree that's very important. It's very hard to know what will happen, but if we imagine the world in which Lucy's been exonerated, Brewery and Jairam are not just going to be able to say, hey, we thought we were doing the right thing. They're going to face scrutiny and they're going to face questioning in some form of inquiry. Who knows what will happen exactly, but they're not just going to be able to brush us under the carpet and say, oh, we didn't mean any harm. That's not going to cut it. So I mentioned jury trials already being abolished for certain cases. A bit further down. You're doing amazing work for Lucy, Catherine says. Thank you very much. I do the best that I can. I'll do it until we see Lucy on the outside of prison. Then we'll move on to other topics. Yeah, so someone's mentioning about when she first arrested, she was staying with her parents after they'd come back from the summer holiday in Devon. So one of the things that you may not know is that Lucy used to go on holiday 3 times a year with her parents. I think that's really that puts in, given in mind that she's obviously a grown adult, that puts into perspective how close she was with her parents, and they used to go to Devon every year. I haven't been to Devon since I was about 4. I remember going to Devon. One of the things I remember is that was the last time I ate grapefruit, and I thought, I'm not having this again. I like sugar in things. I don't like things that taste like this. So, yeah, they were incredibly close, and I've heard accounts from someone who knew Lucy and knew her parents, and she's indicated to me that they were phenomenally close and they were phenomenally proud of her. So that just makes the sting of this even greater. So that just makes me more determined. Her dad must be about 80 now. Horrible. I believe he's not quite 80, but he's approaching the age of 80. Yeah. So there's more comments about Brary and J-Ram. For some reason, I knew straight away that she was innocent. I worked for the NHS and just knew she would have been failed by some part of the NHS. So I think as I mentioned earlier, NHS workers have got the antenna to know this could easily be a problem immediately. If we go back to pre-Lucy Letby, Chris, of 2.5 years ago, I didn't know how bad the culture was in the NHS. Of course, I read media reports. I probably had a bit more idea than most because of what I'd done previously professionally. But it's been a little bit of a shock for me to hear about how bad the culture is and how many problems there are. And, I don't think it would have occurred to me how difficult it is to be a whistleblower and how you can have your career destroyed for the most innocuous remarks. That's really worrying. That's another major issue that needs to be addressed. Because if you're a competent doctor or a competent nurse, or indeed better than a competent doctor or competent nurse, you have to be able to say there are serious, fundamental, systemic problems on our unit, and I'm worried about them. You should be rewarded for that, or at the very least, it should be taken seriously. You shouldn't be punished for saying, "Oh, there's problems on our unit." That's disgraceful and disturbing. And I didn't realise how bad the whistleblowing culture was, and I didn't realise how bad the NHS culture was as well. People that work within the NHS, they immediately they have the materials to say, yeah, this could easily be a miscarriage of justice. So you're starting with a head start over the rest of us. So I'm sure it wasn't surprising to many NHS workers based on what I've heard since. So there's a question here about Paul Hughes not questioning the motives of the doctors. It's the most fundamental thing. Two things. The person that reports a major crime, why are they doing this? And also someone who's in a police station reporting anything, why are they doing that? Of course you should question their motives. It goes without saying. It's one of the most fundamental things you would do as a police officer. The first thing you would do, which they also fail to do, they fail to do the two most important things. Number one, correctly establish there was a crime. Number two, question the motives of the people that were involved in the investigation that reported the crime, the alleged crime that didn't exist. They fail to do the two most fundamental things. I suppose the third thing they failed to do was they failed to do the due diligence on people that were involved in the investigation. His initials are D and E. I think we all know who they should have done more due diligence on. What's the next comment? I don't agree with just judges, but I do think the whole process needs to be more professional. So it's very hard for me to passionately argue in favour of juries because I see the general public on a daily basis, and I know how easy it is to pull the wool over their eyes, particularly for a trained and experienced and highly proficient barrister. But equally, I won't argue against jury trials because if there wasn't a jury in Lucy's case, that wouldn't have helped her in the slightest because it would have been Judge Goss presiding over the case and making the decision. And I surmise that would not have helped her at all. So I'm not advocating in favour of jury trials. And I know there's concerns about some sort of technocracy where AI starts making decisions. I think there's no evidence to say that will happen currently, but it's something that people should be aware of. I definitely see that AI will be more involved, as I've mentioned in previous live streams, with the preparation of cases, because it can do extraordinary research. And not only can it do extraordinary research, but it's the time frame. I mean, AI, I really shied away from using it because, in principle, I hate it because, it has huge consequences for the human race. And for me as a writer, I thought it had more consequences for me than it does. I now realize that it doesn't have the consequences that I thought it did. But it's an incredible, I've now used it more, and it's an incredible research tool because you can give AI a laborious task, and it will, depending on the nature of that task, some of those tasks it can do perfectly in a matter of seconds, and it would take you hours to do it. So that's so useful. And I was always dedicated enough to do these things, but if I can get an AI result in seconds that would take me hours to do and something I don't want to do that is boring to do, that's incredible. And there's no doubt that AI will become a major part of court proceedings, just purely from a research and preparation of cases perspective. I don't agree with having it as part of the adjudication of cases because it's very bad currently at dealing with open-ended questions, and it is a bit sinister and a bit Philip K. Dick for us to have a system in which technology is deciding whether or not someone goes to prison. So yeah, we need to be aware of the whole paradigm related to that, but I'm not going to cry too much about jury cases because I question the ability of juries to understand complex cases. And I do agree with this comment from Denise that it's not the jury that needs removing, it's the system that needs to step away from procedures. So I think the reason the jury is being removed as well is because it takes time to assemble the jury, and the system is so far behind and so far immersed in a backlog of cases, they're trying to speed it up. Not get better decisions, just speed it up. So someone's saying a thumbs up for transparency, which I believe to be very important. So yeah, an interesting suggestion here from Catherine about medical professionals for medical crimes and financial bodies for fraud. Absolutely. So these are two areas where it's clear. The other one is cases that involve complex science. So there need to be bodies put in place, as you rightly say, to ensure that expert witnesses are reliable and that the court gets to hear reliable evidence that it can understand simply. So someone's saying the jury is the review of your fellow citizens. The jury system is essential. The jury failed Lucy is all. They were kept in there for 10 months. So I understand many people, including Sir David Davis, argue in favour of the jury system, and I'm not here to argue against it. And I understand your argument. It's a very valid argument. I think what's happened over the years is the cases have got more and more complex, and the jury is not what it was originally, which is a jury of your peers. It's not really a jury of your peers anymore. It's just some random people. And it's getting harder and harder. And I do believe that educational standards have got worse and people don't think critically. And now AI is going to make that worse as well. So that I'm not as enamored with the jury system as some people are. But equally, I see the dangers of scrapping the jury system, and I'm not advocating for that at all. I don't have all the answers. So I wouldn't like to say. So a very sad post here from Music Soothes the Soul, who recounts an awful incident that happened to them when they went through the system. And yeah, I can't read all of that, unfortunately. I'm really sorry for what you've been through. It's awful, and I've heard some awful stories, and I feel, I feel very passionate that I'll be involved in this field for the rest of my life because, I've heard the story of Michael O'Brien. I hope to bring Michael onto the channel soon. That will be an incredible interview because he has a very powerful story to tell. It was very emotional for me, as I've said several times, because what happened to him was heartbreaking. And I think anyone who's been through circumstances such as your own, you know, it's impossible for me to know how it felt. It must have been awful. I mean, awful doesn't really cover it. It's hard to describe, but I'm sorry for what you've been through. And I feel passionate about doing whatever I possibly can in whatever years I have left. Hopefully, I'll have decades ahead of me, to do whatever I can to help and to try and make a difference. Whatever that will look like, I don't know, but I intend to write more books and keep this channel going for as long as I can breathe, and use whatever platform and whatever voice results from that as much as I possibly can. I often think, yeah, so this is a comment about jurisprudence and the rule of law. So I agree with you that common sense is important. I don't like the way that legal professionals continually fall back on the law and procedure and policy. All I care about is justice, and justice means innocent people stay out of prison and guilty people go to prison. I don't care about policy and procedure. I care about that and what actually happened in the real world. That is what matters to me, not, oh, according to this bit of legislation that was written in 1857, who cares? That means nothing to me. Nothing. Yeah, and I agree with the comment here that the justice system does not want to be seen as getting it wrong. And I think that is a big contributing factor. Now, Vera Bird being visible and open to discussion and argument from people like us that are concerned about miscarriages of justice is very positive. And there's a possibility from that she's going to reform the system, but let's not take that for granted. But we have a good person. We have a person in there that Mark McDonald knows and that he spoke favourably about. I feel favourable towards her based on what she's done so far. So let's give her a chance to do some good stuff. So Simone has shared your live stream amongst the Lucy Letby groups, sharing far and wide. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate the extent to which my material gets shared online. I try to share it a bit myself. At first, I was a bit reticent to do that because sharing your own stuff, it feels a bit like self-publicity, but obviously I've got a bit more comfortable with doing that, so that's fine, but I really appreciate everyone else sharing stuff as well. So someone says turning against each other is what they'll all start to do, Chris, and the sooner the better. Yeah, I can easily envisage that scenario. Let's hope it, as you say, it happens sooner rather than later. The UK systems need a lot less government interference. So to some extent, I agree with you. What you would need would be positive management of those systems. So there are countries in the world, I'd particularly cite the Scandinavian nations, where there's quite a lot of government involvement in the criminal justice system and other social systems, not so much the criminal justice system, other social systems, and they are run far better than us. Now, some of those countries are in a different financial position, but if you have competent intervention, it can be very different. As to whether we will get competent intervention in this country, I've got to stop using my hands now and doing that. Let's do this, see if the system can accept that. Yeah, whether we get competent intervention is another matter entirely. So to a great extent, I agree with you. So I'll just move on from that because I can't read that out. Yeah, someone's talking about digging up the garden. Again, completely preposterous, ridiculous. Don't see any reason for that. It was just for publicity reasons, quite clearly. Stephanie was talking about this in a talk, as someone has pointed out. The jury wasn't at fault in Lucy Letby's case. Cheshire Police, who farted around for years, the CPS who pressed charges on zero evidence, the judge who allowed Dewey's expert evidence, granted anonymity, and so on. So yeah, I agree. The jury was presented with a very difficult task. It was very difficult for them to understand the case. There weren't enough people present to argue against the expert witnesses basically won, who was the barrister. So it was a very unsatisfactory case in terms of the way that it was presented. I think even people that believe Lucy is guilty should surely have to concede that. Not many of them will, but anyone who's even remotely objective would agree that the original process was unsatisfactory. Someone says privatizing the NHS will never happen. It's too political. It certainly would be a difficult decision for anyone to make, and I do tend to agree with you to a certain extent. Prosecution witnesses misdirected the jury and allowed a majority verdict. These are the ones to blame. So they definitely did not help. But I would like to say that the case shouldn't have gone to court in the first place. It could very easily have been presented. So it prevented rather, not presented. So once it got to court, it was always going to be difficult. That needed to be avoided, and it wasn't. But it's very, very clear that we need to improve the processes that go into a court case, including the investigation. I noticed Baby D did not get a lumbar puncture. That's always done as a septic workup. Lucy in her text was saying they think the baby had bacterial meningitis. That's huge. So that's really interesting. That's another thing for your list. I'll look forward to hearing more about that. Well, as they didn't set it up properly from the start, according to crime scene management procedures, never mind there's proof they couldn't have dug a garden up, they find zero evidence. Yeah, hard to disagree. I hope that Lucy's fellow prisoners are being kind to her. So all the evidence we have indicates that she's being very much protected and that people in the prison now believe that she's innocent. So you're always going to get a few bad eggs, but Lucy is, as a prisoner, in about the best position that she possibly could be. That's all I can say. Good evening to Carl Sinclair. Good to have you here. Such a cute doggo, says Indigo19. Thank you very much. Kika gets a lot of compliments. As I said last week, a lot more than me, which I deserve because she's a beautiful dog. And I'll bring her on camera before the end. She's just woken up. She's just doing a bit of grumbling because she's not getting enough attention. So I'll give her some attention soon. But she's just lying. She's lying out. She's been very good today, actually, during this. So I'm really pleased with her. It's the cover-up policy that really annoys me. All public bodies and organisations go to cover up. Yeah, it is really, really annoying. I agree with you. It's, why there seems to be a complete absence of people that are willing to hold their hands up and accept culpability for things, which is a sad comment on the broader culture, again, I would say. I can't even imagine how devastating this could be. My heart goes out to Lucy, absolutely. I think it's impossible for us to understand. I followed this case since her first arrest. I kept Googling to see what had happened. I kept thinking they must not have enough evidence. I couldn't believe the length of time between arrests. So yeah, a lot of people who followed it at the time did think precisely that. They did think there's explicit. If you go back and look at Cheshire articles in the Cheshire Standard, there are comments, and there are people saying, "Why are you still holding this nurse? Why are you still investigating this nurse? This has gone on forever." And a lot of people felt the same way that you did. I wasn't following at that time, but yeah, it was definitely regrettable. I would agree. Another comment about, I saw they gave a couple of non-indicted babies an antibiotic that's used for bacterial meningitis. Very interesting. Please do make note of that. The unit was a death trap made of RAAC, which was then exposed to water, can crumble. Yeah, that's a known fact. I genuinely believe she's innocent, and we can't afford to let them get away with a hideous miscarriage of justice, leave no stone unturned. So all I can say is I will do everything that I possibly can. It's as simple as that, for as long as it takes. And I will be here, and things will be ramping up in the foreseeable future. Glad to see more interest. Keep up the good work, everyone. Thanks to Chris and the many other public figures. That's no problem. Thank you for the support, as always, Carl. My heart absolutely breaks for Lucy and her parents, and I'm not ashamed to say I am crying. I know what that being broken by others' actions and having your realities twisted is like on this side. Just so this person, I don't know if it's a gentleman or a lady, music soothes the soul, would know better than any of us what Lucy's going through. It is there is definitely no shame in crying, and I've definitely felt very emotional at times. It is an awful thing, and that what makes me so determined to keep going and make a difference if I can. So someone's mentioned the 19 Nurses channel, so yeah, shout out to them. I'll be covering their videos as I mentioned earlier soon. So my book is called, there's a question about my book. My book will probably be called, very likely to be called, Reasonable Doubt, Examining the Conviction of Lucy Letby. I can't discuss the publishing date yet, but there should be some news on that imminently, and I will share details with you as soon as I possibly can. I will join any event that is held for Lucy. Is it okay to write to her? Please do write to her. She's in, write to her at prison. Make sure that you put a prison number on it. There's various other things you need to do, but yeah, please do write to her. So Sarah Ann White is saying, I 100% agree that trauma changes who you are. I lost my dad to lung disease and mental illness at age 8. I'm not the person I could have been. Yeah. So that would make an enormous difference to you. I'm very sorry to hear that, obviously. I think, you can gain a kind of strength from it as well. But obviously the trauma is going to have an enormous impact on you and your outlook on life. That's undeniable. A friend of mine, a close friend, lost a parent at a young age, not as young as you were. But it was very painful. It was a very difficult time. I will always have a bit of a bond because of that, because I was very close with her and still am. So, yeah, I'm sorry what you've been through is tragic. I'm wondering if a government petition for court transparency might have more success than petitions for release, etc. Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion. It's so hard to successfully petition the government in this country because they just don't care a lot of the time. So I think the climate will eventually shift to where politicians will have to pay more attention. When that will be, I don't know entirely. But it's very difficult to get the government to do something they don't want to do. Radiology seems to have escaped criticism scot-free on Lucy's case. Not sure if there was investigated radiology, but it's my view they were part of the failures. So they haven't investigated anything that would do anything other than make Lucy look guilty. So they haven't investigated anything like that, that's for sure. So someone's asking me to shout the doggy. So hi to Lewis, the doggy. I'm guessing Lewis won't react too much, but I'm sure your doggy is beautiful. And dogs are the best companions. I love dogs very, very much. Most of these petitions seem to be just brushed aside, but it was very difficult for them to do that in the current climate. So hopefully the climate is going to come where it couldn't be just brushed aside, as you suggest. But I think it needs to get a bit more intense yet, but I think that's coming. Someone else has 2 dogs and loves them, which is great. Yeah, so there's the question here about Myers not responding to Nina Modi. I cannot give you a good explanation for that. It's incomprehensible that Nina Modi was not contacted when she offered support. There is no justifiable reason for that. She should have been contacted. She says, I never even got an email back. Impossible to understand. Let's go a bit further. Hi, Chris. Hi, Lynn. How you doing? I hope you're well. Thank you for all you're doing. Well, thank you for being such a consistent commenter since day one of my channel. I mean, I can remember you being there right at the start. And thank you for the support ever since. paraphrasing a known legal principle, no man has the right to be judging his own case unless your name is Brewery. Yeah. Unfortunately, that legal principle doesn't always work out in the real world as well as we might want it to. The prosecution could present a whole new case. The defence would claim a clear abuse of process. I mean, they're not going to do that realistically, but they do have the right to significantly change aspects of the case. Whether they would do that, I have no idea, because it would be detrimental to them, arguably, and also there may not even be a retrial. Let's go a little bit further down. Comments about trauma. I was introduced to the issues by the New Yorker article, though something triggered me to search it out. It was seemingly blocked and not easy to find. After reading that, I thought it sounded. So I don't know. Yes, I don't know what this So Hard was going to say. Probably it sounded dubious, or it sounded as if it could be a miscarriage of justice. So, oh no, it sounded like she was. Here it is. Sorry, like she was probably innocent, but I did also think at that time that it was obvious the hospital was performing terribly, and even if she had done it, they would be culpable for driving her mad. So it's interesting. New Yorker was an exemplary piece of journalism, and I really commend Rachel Aviv and Claire C for working on that. It opened a lot of people's eyes, and that's why it was blocked. It would have opened a lot of people's eyes a lot more quickly. Of course, we found ways to view it, and a lot of people viewed it, but it was a great piece of journalism. Someone's questioning my decision to eat grapefruit in Devon. Well, it was the summer. I was in Torquay. I was very, very young. I was 4, I think, and I'd never seen a grapefruit before, so I thought it tasted like orange or something like that. All I remember is I hated it, and I've never tried it since. Maybe it's time to try grapefruit again. There's a few things in my life that I've tasted that I've never been able to like. One of them was grapefruit. I've never tried that again because it just seems so horrible. One is peanut butter, and I know people love peanut butter, but as a kid, I always hated it. And I've tried it periodically all the way through my life every few years, and I just think it's disgusting. And the other one, I'm not keen on yogurt. I prefer yogurt to peanut butter and grapefruit, but I just think it tastes awful. I can stomach it, but it's not for me. But yeah, I hated grapefruit. NHS is lethal if you get on the wrong side of them. Yeah, and I say that as an NHS nurse, so I'm learning this now. It's a very sad situation, and this is another thing that needs to be reformed, is the culture. And this is exactly what 19 Nurses are talking about, and Viv has spoken about very eloquently in her presentation, is that that there needs to be the end of the blame culture, and there needs to be an evolution of the culture to a much healthier healthcare culture. So a comment about Rachel Aviv and the government banning it. I give massive credit to Rachel, and I agree it's a red flag that it was blocked. So we're going to read. I'm going to read this comment out, and this person should not be ashamed of what they're ashamed to say. So I was a follower of the trial with Liz and Caroline. Still felt like I'd been punched in the chest when I heard the verdict. Shout out to Jasper, the Siberian cat. So you follow the trial, and they did put a lot. The one thing I'll say for them, they did put a lot of information out there that people have absorbed. Now, I wasn't there at the time to absorb that information, so I've been following it myself in my own way. But a lot of people learnt a lot from that podcast, despite the fact that I believe from a journalistic and editorial point of view, it wasn't very good. AI should not be used for things of such import in its current form. I agree. I don't think it should be used at all, because we're dealing with human cases, and there shouldn't be a machine that stands alone. I'm reminded of War Games, the film War Games that I used to love when I was a kid, where a computer system is put in charge of the nuclear weapons and nuclear weapon systems, a bit like Terminator, I suppose. And it doesn't end. It ends okay in the end, but it's a bit hairy for a while. Now, obviously, I don't think it'll be as serious as that, but there will be very serious consequences. A miscarriage of justice that involves human error is terrible, and it has serious consequences. But a miscarriage of justice created solely by a machine and by machine intelligence is an entirely different magnitude of being problematic, for sure. Chris, you should look into the police investigations of other high-profile cases and the mistakes they made or tried to cover, even collab with Stephanie in the future. Yeah, that would be awesome. Can I say that there are plans to collab with Stephanie, but we haven't done that yet for various reasons. I know I keep saying this about numerous things, but we are actually going to do that in the future. There will, but I think it's a brilliant idea, and it's definitely something I'd like to do. And if Stephanie will come on and help me, that would be amazing. I mean, I'm super privileged that I know her and that I can ask her to come on. So yeah, that's a great idea, and something that when Lucy's case is dealt with, this is the kind of thing we can look at. And I'm very, very passionate about doing that. Let's go a bit further down. The problem with the laborious task, though, Chris, is that it's often not as accurate as a human can be. That is true with AI. That's why you have to pick the task very carefully. So AI is good if you know you're giving it something it can do quickly and as well as you can do it, or better in some cases. And it's also good if you're asking it to just do, like, as a research tool to uncover things quickly. It's amazing. Really useful, and it's also useful if you know the answer to something. So I used it recently in that Dr. Evans video because I knew damn well that I was right, and I knew damn well it would tell me that I was right. So there, it can be a useful illustrative tool. But I agree with you; it doesn't do. I gave it. There was this task. I was looking at I think it would have been the US Open tennis recently. There was one round. Fourth round, I think it was, and it was extraordinarily one-sided. So I tried to ask ChatGPT, was this the most one-sided fourth round in the history of Grand Slams? And I rapidly found out that ChatGPT cannot work that out, certainly not in the free version. So eventually, I had a conversation with it. I was like, can you do this? Can you do that? Could you do this? And then eventually it said, oh yeah, I'll get you some results. And it just spewed out this data that was utter rubbish. It was completely incorrect, very obviously incorrect. That's where you have to be careful, for sure. Liz Hull and Caroline Cheatham's podcast highlighted to me how biased they both are. I stopped listening and looked into it myself. Shout out to my pet mouse called Mousy. Hello to Mousy. I feel it's very unlikely Mousy is going to understand this, but shout out to Mousy. I used to have a gerbil when I was younger. It was, what's he called? Can't remember. I was very, very young when I had a pet gerbil. But yeah, it's interesting that you listened to their podcast, Simone, and it highlighted how biased they are. I mean, that is quite clear. The NHS is a culture all of its own, and their legal teams fight dirty. The NHS even had a legal team in court. Yeah. So we've seen the problems with if you're a whistleblower in the NHS, and that needs to change. Bonnie, I had extreme trauma from criminals 2 years ago. I was peaceful before. After it happened, I was real angry. Now, with help from counselling, I finally let my anger go. Yes, trauma changes you. Well, I'm glad to hear you're coming through that. But yeah, if you're in a difficult situation, we all go through life experiences that change us. I mean, this isn't something that's directly happened to me, but clearly this has already changed my life, and it's going to change it more. So I'm not the same person as when I started, and it's nowhere near the same as having a really traumatic event happen to you directly, of course. And I wouldn't suggest it is for 1 second, but we all go through life, sometimes these sliding doors moments where if we hadn't experienced that, we'd be a different person. And that's just part of how our psyche works. And sometimes it's troubling, sometimes it's difficult, but sometimes it just makes you stronger. So I hope that's happened for you, Simone, because Bonnie. I don't know. I'm saying Simone because that's answering the question from Bonnie there. So yeah, I hope that's happened for you, and I hope you're in a good place now because you're a very appreciated supporter. The problem with jury trials is not that they are more likely to get things wrong, rather that the verdict becomes sanctified and the reasoning is a black box. Yeah, an interesting point. from Robert there. They are put on a pedestal. The jury is put on a pedestal, whereas AI wouldn't be put on a pedestal. That's actually an argument in favour of AI, even though I don't believe AI should be presiding over court cases. But we definitely wouldn't put AI on a pedestal. So let me just scroll down. We're nearly up to 3 hours now. So I'll scroll down and see if there are any other very specific comments or questions. So I like to make these about 3 hours. Like my voice is starting to go after 3 hours. I don't know why I have such problems with my throat, but I do. It's not serious, but it just gets dry if I talk a lot. It starts to get, after 3 hours of constant talking, I start to get a sore throat. I mean, not nice. So some comments about Stephanie. So yeah, we agree that what's happened to Stephanie is awful. I think in the long run, I agree that it's backfired. She's spoken so capably and with such authority since. So she's a massive asset to what we're doing, no doubt. Someone else asking to write to Lucy. I don't have her details. That there are specific. You ask if there are restrictions. There are specific things that you need to do. I don't know what they are. I'm afraid that I don't have her details. So let me just mention that I haven't written to Lucy. Cards have been passed around and I haven't signed them, and that was a very conscious decision because I want to be able to say, if I'm ever asked, have you spoken to Lucy? Have you met Lucy? I want to be able to say no, because I feel that my book and my investigation is, I've made it as dispassionate, as forensic as I could. It's not an emotional book. There are some emotional aspects to it, of course, and I do try to tap into that a little bit, but I want people to look at the facts. And the last thing I want anyone to say is, oh, you've met Lucy, you're here campaigning on behalf of Lucy, etc., etc. That's not true. This is about this being an unsafe conviction and about the future of the criminal justice system. Lucy is an unwilling and unfortunate participant in this story. So at this point in time, it's not appropriate for me to have contact with Lucy. And I've thought about this quite carefully. And I must say, I spoke to someone recently who was very credible. And as soon as I told them this, they said, yeah, that's a very wise decision. So I actually don't have her details and I've shied away from any contact. So someone else could post them, or someone, if you ask me a question in one of my videos, including this one, I'll make that a question in a future Q&A, and I'll find out the details, or someone can answer you in the comment section. But I don't know the answer to that question basically fully because I've not gone down that route myself. Let's keep scrolling down. My cat Nuisance feels you should have made a shout out to cats before dogs. So hello to Nuisance. I love cats. I had a cat when I was very young. My cat very sadly got run over when I was very young. That was traumatizing. I've probably never been the same since then. I do love cats, and I did have a cat in my Airbnb when I stayed in Croatia, and it features in one of my videos. And I love cats. I am a dog person, and Kiko unfortunately makes it impossible for me to have a lot of contact with cats because. So I'll tell you a little story about Kiko, right? So one day I was in the hills near my house, and I was walking down the hill, and down the pathway, the only way to walk, there was a bird that was winged, so it couldn't fly. It was hopping along. I could see this bird has been badly damaged. It can't fly, because if it could fly, it would see Kiko now and it'd be flying off. So I thought this could get fairly unsavory. I thought this would be the ultimate test for Keeks. So Keeks saw the bird and was going into hunter mode, and she chased after it, but she never harmed. She could have easily have harmed that bird easily, and she never touched it. She just chased it and chased it around, scared the bird half to death, but she never laid a paw on the bird. And I don't think she has the instinct to kill or the instinct to harm anymore. I think the instinct to chase and to hunt is still there. Well, I know damn well it is. But I think she ultimately wouldn't hurt anything now. It's just not in her nature because she's been domesticated, and she loves to hunt and she loves to play and she loves play fighting. But she would never. I don't think she would hurt now. So I don't think she would actually hurt cats, but she very, very, very much would pursue cats. So I have to keep her away from cats, unfortunately. So let's go a bit further down. Need to go, Chris. Enjoyed the stream. Bye for now and cheerio. Thanks for being here, Frosty Robots. Been really enjoyable to do and really, really appreciate your support. Oh, beetroot. Yeah, I've had a lifelong hatred of beetroot after being forced to eat at school. So I don't mind beetroot. It wouldn't be high on my list of favourite things to eat. So someone said grapefruit tastes just as bad now as it did when you were a kid, but it can be a good sort of bad. Agree about peanut butter. I do not get it. Yeah, I don't. Because that was supposed to be a treat. And I was like, well, it looks like something. Use your imagination as to what it looks like. It smells like something and it tastes like something. It's all the same thing. And it wouldn't be something that I would choose to eat under normal circumstances. So, oh, you're someone who loves war games. That's great. I absolutely loved that film when I was a kid. It had I don't know why, but I've mentioned this before. I was really fixated with nuclear war at a very young age. I'm a strange person. I'm more than happy to hold my hands up to that. But that film had everything that I loved at the time, which was twagging it off school, computers, chess is in it a little bit, video games, and then I was fascinated with nuclear war. That was my favourite film until I was a little bit old enough to realise that it's not the best film ever made, but it's still a film that I love. And I've watched so many times. I used to virtually know the script to war games. I've seen it that often. Maybe I should try. So someone said homemade peanut butter is amazing. Maybe I should give this a go. Get a high torque blender because I do like to do some cooking. I do like to make things. So maybe I could have a crack at making my own peanut butter. Find a good recipe. Do you have a good recipe for homemade peanut butter, Jay Brown? You've been traumatized by that grapefruit. Yeah, I have. It's emblazoned on my memory forever. As someone else is trying real peanut butter as well. Signing off from New Zealand. Thanks for being here, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so maybe I'll try and make my own peanut butter and report back to you. But oh yeah, Tic-Tac-Toe. Someone's mentioning Katie. Yeah, it's a great film. It's a really entertaining, really enjoyable film. And of course, Matthew Broderick's in Ferris as well. So Ferris Bueller's Day Off is another film that I loved. Probably now I'd probably say Ferris Bueller's is a little bit better than War Games. When I was a kid, I loved War Games so much, and I still love it now. But I love Ferris as well. So, but yeah, the two films I really like. Scrolling a bit down. How is everybody? Glad to see. Oh, Liverpool got slapped, did they? So I could read out the football scores. So let's see what happened, because I haven't looked at the football scores at all. PSV put 4 past Liverpool. Arsenal 3, Bayern Munich 1. Arsenal are a good team, aren't they? They look so good this season. Timber, Madwaking, Gabriel Martinelli. They can swap the squad. They've got virtually 2 first teams. They've got a great chance of winning everything this season. Liverpool 1, PSV 4. They just look. I actually did think it could unsettle them to sign these new players, these new attacking players. It often happens, but I didn't expect them to do what they're doing. Olympiacos 3, Real Madrid 4. Mbappe got 4 for Real Madrid. Paris Saint-Germain 5, Tottenham 3. Back to the drawing board for Tottenham's defence. Seems like they were ahead a couple of times, and then they just crumbled at the end. Oh well, never mind. Yeah, so interesting. So I better go back to non-football issues now. Sugar on grapefruit is a game changer. Yeah. Why do people eat it? Does anyone know why people eat it? Because it just seemed absolutely repulsive when I had it. Glad to catch a live stream, Pet Mom. Glad that you're here. Thanks for being here. Reservation with AI is that they may program it to be brilliant, so we all use and trust it. Once we trust it, they will manipulate in their favour. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Lisa Rogers, well done, Chris. Keep up your amazing work. Thank you for the support, Lisa. Appreciate it very, very much. Let's keep going down. Thank you for all you're doing, Chris. In Italy, they say l'unione fa la forza. I hope I pronounced that close. That's why these live events you do are so important. Thank you, Claudia. I really appreciate that. I mean, again, I didn't have any plans to do it, and I thought I've got enough of a following now. Hopefully, someone would turn up, and maybe I could do it competently. So yeah, I really enjoy doing it. I'll try and do a few every month because people seem to really enjoy them. Yeah, so someone reported earlier they had a cat and a dog, and I see these YouTube videos of people that have cats and dogs together, and I find that extraordinary because my dog could not live with a cat. It's unthinkable. Why the CCRC taking so long to refer the case to the Court of Appeal? So I've answered this question in a forthcoming Q&A, but they have to go through certain processes, and they can't just get. I mean, I was asked a question about how long should it take to see this as a miscarriage of justice, and I estimated weeks, or maybe a month at the most. But realistically, they can't just have it for a month and then go, "Oh, there you go, we've got rid of it. It's back with the Court of Appeal." They need to go through a thorough process. Unfortunately, not understanding the science means they need to get people in who do understand the science, and so therefore, yeah, it'll take a little bit of time. But I don't know the full answer because I don't know exactly what they do. Some people have said I should work for the CCRC. I think that's very unlikely to happen, given that maybe I have the skills. That's for other people to say. But by the time this is over, I will have become a very prominent advocate for someone who's convicted in miscarriage of justice. So I think I would not be seen as neutral enough. And I really don't have any intention of applying, to be honest. But if they thought I was if they headhunted me, I would listen to them. I don't think I would apply independently. I mean, I've been headhunted for a lot of writing jobs. Whether I'd be headhunted for CCRC is highly doubtful. Let's go a bit further down. Nearly caught you up now. Love Ferris Bueller's Day Off too. I mean, it's a brilliant film. I can't imagine anyone not getting some joy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. A great film for people of all ages. Someone has a strange recollection about grapefruit again. I'm glad I brought up grapefruit. I've lived with this for so many years, and now I feel validated in my opinion on grapefruit. I roast the peanuts and blend them. I don't add any other ingredients. Fascinating. How do you roast peanuts? So I'll look this up. Whenever I do something new with cooking, I just look up. I mean, I have no pretension of being a chef or a cook or someone who makes up their own recipes. I just get one of these geniuses and just copy what they do, and that works for me. And you get a good result. Not always chefs. I mean, I've copied some chefs. I've done like some Gordon Ramsay recipes from Jamie Oliver, but I like a good home cook. I like the channel Kitchen Sanctuary. If you've ever watched that, that's one of my favourites. I just copy what they do basically. So I'll look that up, and maybe I'll give peanut butter one last go. Wonder if Lucy can sue the union for not helping her more. That's extremely doubtful, but she may highlight the failings of what the union, or what I believe to be the failings, which is that they've done nothing for her at all. And they're still very, very quiet. And I understand that it's complicated and contentious and controversial, but the union has done literally nothing for her. So we're nearly at the end here. So someone says, whenever I watch this film, I feel like I'm 10 years old every time. So I don't know if they mean War Games. Oh God, I hate this feature. What a stupid feature. I don't know if they mean War Games, Ferris Bueller, or Flight the Navigator. I think they probably mean Flight the Navigator, which is good as well. That's got a great dog scene at the start where they're all catching the frisbees, of course. I only like the pink red grapefruit now. Great first thing in the morning. As for peanut butter, I'm a connoisseur. only whole earth organic smooth. Am I allowed to plug it? Well, you have, so it's fine. Yeah, you need to eat quality peanut butter, I think, but it's just not my cup of tea. So I'm right to the end now. So I'm just getting some comments about dogs and cats being fine together, dogs and cats sleeping together with chickens. You can't let Kiko cannot be let loose with cats and chickens. There's going to be a bloodbath. No, I mean, seriously, I know now because of the bird story, she probably wouldn't hurt them, but she'd never go to sleep. That's for sure. So I've completely caught up with the comments now. I'm actually getting pretty good at this. I've done it 3 times in roughly 3 hours every time. So it's been really fun. So I've got one job I need to do, haven't I, Keeks? So you're going to come up. What are we going to do now, Kiko? Are we going to do something for Kiko? Are we going to do something for Kiko? Are you hungry? Is Kiko hungry? Would you like something to eat? You're not coming up, Keeks. Come here. Here. Right then. I'm going to have to pick you up if you're not going to come up. Because people, you're the star of the show. People only come to see you. I'm of secondary importance compared to you. You're the star, aren't you? Yeah, so thank you. No, you're not going down yet. You're staying to the end. Go on, you always want to be on me when I don't want you to be on me, so now you need to be on me. So, I really appreciate you all being here. I've now got to go and get something for Keeks, as you can see. So, yeah, I'll try to get more dog in there in the future. Yeah. I mean, so people that are cat people, I must say that they are a better choice as a pet because Kiko. I mean, I always say to people, I don't have a life. I have a dog. I mean, Kiko is basically my life now is the Lucy Letby case and Kiko, and then I'll try to eat and try to have a wash, and that's basically it. And I'll try and have a little bit of downtime so I don't go mental. So they do take up a lot of time. Keeks has got bones all over the house. Don't worry. I didn't allow her to have a bone today because it does make a lot of grinding noise. But Keeks there must be at least 15 bones in this house that she's ground down, and she gets a new one every 3 weeks. So it's not a problem. So thank you for all the kind words on Keeks because that means a lot. And thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Kiko appreciates it, even though she didn't get as much attention as she usually would. I definitely appreciate it, and we'll do another one again soon. And there'll be a new interview on Friday. And thank you all again for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all again soon.